we're streaming live.
Thank you very much. Welcome everyone to our budget work session. I think this is number 7. I'd like to call the meeting to order and welcome everyone joining us remotely or by phone. Please call the roll.
Mayor Gore.
Here.
Vice Mayor Bennett.
Here.
Councilor Randolph.
Here.
Councilor Holloway.
Here.
I was told that Mr. Parton or Councilor Parton is going to be Councilor Denton.
I can barely hear information.
I'm sorry, Councilor Denton.
Here.
Councilor Pelham.
Present.
Okay, and the clerk's line got a little muffled. Councilor Parton did notify everyone properly that he may not be in attendance this evening. He has the Guard Reserve duty in Richmond. If he can get free, he will join us. If not, we know that he is serving everyone right now in Richmond with the protests and riots. So let's keep him lifted in prayer, make sure he's safe during this time. We will proceed to our budget work session. We have outside agencies and non-departmental, and that was a leftover from our last meeting. So we'll start with those two, and I'll just scroll down to the packet, Mr. Altman, to where you want me to go. And Council, can you please make sure your lines are muted right now until you have your hand raised to speak, because you're picking up some background conversation.
Yeah. So it's the last 2 sheets of the work session material. So this is council's budget. That's non-departmental right there. If you want to just start there, that's fine, and then we can go to outside agencies.
What page? Can you give a page number?
It's page 46 at the top of your munis report.
Okay.
Non-departmental.
I get it, yeah.
Yeah, and those lines there include our employee health insurance, our group life insurance, our EAP program, our contingency line item, contingency litigation line item that was established, the repayment of the CSA funds, and then some phone, fax, dues and memberships. There's an office supply line item. So those are the ones that are on that page.
My hand won't raise. Why?
It's raised now, and you just lowered it.
Oh, okay. Okay, raise my hand. Okay.
Okay, you have a question for Mr. Altman?
Yeah, why do we have phone and fax in there? And that's just for benefits. It's not an office.
Well, there's no money in it this year. So, and it may have been where we just had a place line holder for, if I don't know, in years past where you could have had, you were paying for an internet access or something citywide. Most of these line items deal with citywide costs as opposed to specific departmental.
Yeah, but you don't have a separate line for human resources. So can you just delete it so know that it's not a cost incurring item?
For for the phone and fax?
Yeah, I mean, why do you need it? It's not an office.
Well, usually you keep it for a while, and then once you don't fund it, then you drop it off, but you don't drop it off immediately the first year. So we have to have a little bit of a tracking. So we may be able to drop it off next year. But right now we just are showing that you have money in it the current year, which we show some charges to, but now that we've made those adjustments with the phones that we have going to voice over IP, then those costs will drop, and we're accounting for them elsewhere.
What did you pay $39,000 for on the phone?
I don't know what that charge is. I can't access that one directly off of my computer. But I can find out what that is.
And same thing for dues and membership program, $30,000. Is that for all somewhere someone else couldn't pay for it?
So those are our NLC, VML, Virginia First Cities. Those memberships are captured, those citywide memberships that we have, not like my ICMA, individual ICMA membership, but the citywide memberships for that the city's involved in, that's where we capture those dues and memberships at.
And bank fees, what would they incur bank fees? They don't have any expenditures for it, but why are you program $1,000 in bank fees?
I would say if we have a fee that we have to pay that may come up during the year, that those funds are there in order to make that payment. And in the past, we haven't really exceeded much more than $1,000. So
Can
just to
Can
cover,
you research that though? It don't make sense to have it here for other.
well,
A
I
bank
guess the question would be,
fee
where would you think?
departmental. If it's not a department, why would you have a bank fee? What are they charging? You know
Well,
what I'm saying? Just before you give me an answer, if you don't know, just say it and just research it, because it don't sound right.
Okay, we'll research it.
And in lieu of taxes, is that, you told me already, I think what that was. Can you tell me again?
So those are funds that we would collect from an agency or a department that we don't get to tax because they're a local, say, and it showed up when you had in the wastewater budget and in lieu of taxes because they are a revenue fund. So we're not charging them taxes, but we have the ability to, they don't pay a tax, but we charge them a fee in lieu of receiving taxes from them.
So just tell us who this one is for later on.
Yep, we can do that.
Okay, thank you. Because I thought we said somebody was does housing pay taxes?
The Housing Authority does not pay taxes, but I think their amount would be higher than the $7,500. But we'll find out what that $7,500 is attached to.
Thank you.
Counselor Randolph?
Can't see my hand.
Wait a minute, sorry, I guess I was on mute.
Mhm.
I was asking if the city manager had ever received the gateway reimbursement that they had indicated to the board members that they were going to give back to the communities this year because of COVID and them not being able to do as much as they normally do. Because I know we had indicated that, I had indicated that at a previous meeting. They were going to do that, and that when looked at it, we determined that the payment amount each year to them was $20,000.
So I don't think I haven't received a letter from them that I've received that has a reimbursement check in it yet.
Okay.
We'll check and
Would
see.
you check with them, please, and see if that's coming back and when, so we know what's going on with that, because that would be captured here as well, correct?
Well, Gateway is in our outside agencies.
Oh, okay, sorry.
It's all right.
But yeah, if you would check with them, because I want to see that line item come back. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Counselor Pelham, did you have something else?
But that wouldn't be a expense, would it? It'd be a revenue, incoming revenue, wouldn't it? It'd be somewhere else.
Yes, it would be
Okay.
a revenue. Yes.
And EAP. Does EAP have, okay. Is that a separate EAP from Human Resources, or is all EAP, is that another department using employment assistance?
So my thought has been that these funds, they're attached to our EAP program, but they're there should we need to bring someone in to address an issue citywide, not specifically through HR, but if we had additional needs beyond what we have in HR, that those funds are there. I mean, ultimately, those funds could be rolled over to the EAP line item that you could create in HR, but I can't remember. I don't believe there was an EAP line item in HR's budget.
I think it is.
Yes, because we asked her, why is there, this is the second location where EAP is listed. Why aren't they all pulled under her? And if I
Yeah.
remember, she said that this was she thought, she didn't know what this was when she looked at it. I think she said she thought was the annual payment for that they have to do some type of payment she has to make. And she didn't realize it was down there. If I remember the conversation.
I don't remember. Well, I think they all should be together, so it won't be confusing.
Yeah, that would be one of the places that we could put those funds specifically for the EAP program. But I think when we have obviously things that are across the board, kind of like the health insurance and things of that nature, we would not want to put that line item in a departmental budget, because then that would give that director or even myself direct control over if we put let's just say our insurance payment, which is the second line item, that needs to be out where it's across the board and we don't give one individual department head complete control over those funds.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Any other questions? Okay, you can go to the next part of the budget, please.
So if you want to go down one page, that's outside agencies. You okay, Miss Pelham?
I'm fine.
Okay. Yeah, I just was worried you're getting choked up.
Yeah, so we're in the wrong pipe. Excuse me.
So this is the area where we provide funding to all of the entities that are not city agencies. We do fund our award luncheon through here. But we moved that in the coming budget year, and we funded from here in the past. We've moved it to HR for this year, but here we have MedFlight, we have your 4 for Life money, Riverside Criminal Justice, the State Health Department, District 19, Feed More, the Food Pantry, Rockin' on River funding was there at one point in time, but that's funded elsewhere now. Our Gateway region, the Longwood Small Business Assistance Center, our Chamber of Commerce dues, Hopewell Emergency Crew was funded through here. This is where we fund for Petersburg Area Transit, and then the Petersburg Area Agency for Aging is funding. The RC&D, which we've been active in the past, but not so much anymore. Our funding for FOLAR, the Creator Planning District Commission. This is where our warming shelter money is at. Our funding for the Petersburg Symphony, the Petersburg Area Regional Tourism part, funding for OC3, Extension Office funding, the City of Refuge, our Ride Finders, John Tyler Community College, Richard Bland, Virginia State. These are the line where we fund the Appomattox Regional Library System, Historic Hopewell, the Downtown Hopewell Partnership, the Beacon Theater funding, and then the pass-through. As you see, there's no funding in the current year or for the proposed year. And I know Ms. Pelham had asked me some questions, and we're working on looking into those regarding mainly making sure that those entities that we have provided funding for make their request to get the funding if they haven't yet already. And then she did have a question regarding the extension office, because we don't have funding there for it this year. If there is, making sure that they do get their funding that they've requested. Or so if you have any questions about outside agencies.
Counselor Pelham and then Counselor Randolph.
Well, my question that I would ask before, do the agencies know that they have to request the money? That's after they put in for it. Is there something that will direct them to say that, please send the money? Why do, after they justify the money, we give it to them? Why do they have to person request it? Why don't you just let it and send them the check?
So most agencies send us a letter
Right?
saying, thank you for your support. Please send us, the X number to some, because some agencies may bill you quarterly and some may just ask for it all at one time. But we can reach out to the agencies that have not.
Yeah, can we just make a policy that if we approve, the council approve these, for them to get the money? I don't see why we just wouldn't have a policy to say, once approved, all checks will be done one time, whether they, don't let them decide whether it's quarterly, we just give them a lump sum and get it over with. That's less accounting and less chance of trying to interchange letters and all of that. And in my opinion, anyway.
Mhm.
Whatever works for y'all. The other question I had was Riverside Criminal. Is that this group called here? Okay, that's not Riverside, the jail.
No, that Riverside the jail is actually a line, a budget line, but this is Ms. Hunley's group. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, sir. Okay. And health department. Okay. Well, you got all my questions, so you
Mhm.
can email me those. I guess all of us those answers, because I can't remember what I asked totally. And create a PDC. What was the question for that? Never mind. What is create a PDC with such a lower number? I know we pay planning district more than that.
Well, that's actually their funding model is based on our population numbers. So
But
that,
this is not it.
yes, ma'am, that's what we pay Crater Planning District Commission, the $18,299.
But on page, I think it's on page 34, there's another line item for them, another amount that's larger than that. I had that a long time ago. I haven't looked at it since. See, total Crater. Let's go to detention on 34.
Well, so we do have a Crater Youth Care Commission, which is where this is our youth detention facility.
Yeah, that's
And
different.
that's probably what's on page 34, but this is the funding that we provide the PDC, Denny Morris and his group and the MPO.
Okay, I got them mixed up. Okay.
Yep, no, that's fine. We've got a lot of craters floating around, so I understand that completely.
Okay, for OC3. Oh, never mind. Did you ever get a letter from them?
I'd have to go back and look in the packet. I don't recall if it's slipped my mind, but I could go back and look in the packet if we received a letter from OC3.
Okay. That's in hope for a partnership. Are they hired? Have they hired anyone else to take Evan's place?
To my knowledge, they have not. I don't know if Mr. Dane has more up-to-date information, but to my knowledge, they have not hired anyone.
They were out seeking more applicants. They had a batch interviewed and it didn't quite work out, so they were seeking further applicants, the last I heard.
Okay. All right.
Does this complete your questions, Counselor Pelham?
Yeah, and I thought we gave the Beacon $300,000. Is that other 100,000 somewhere else?
No, we give them 200,000.
But I thought we pledged 100,000 for community events.
Well, it's a lump sum of 200, roughly allocated that 100 would be to support operations and 100 to try to support community events.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
And so what did they support? They spent 200,000 and they completed?
Unfortunately, and well, and what we've done this year is we have the Beacon Theater LLC.
Mhm.
So we take those funds when they make requests for us to have to support shortfalls in their operational expenses. Then the LLC requests funding from the city to then cover the costs over on the Beacon side.
And we don't, the city doesn't get involved. You just do that yourself, or you bring that to us? I've not remember doing anything for them like that.
No, we do it ourselves. We make the requests through the LLC for the funding, and then the city cuts a check. We deposit it in the LLC to then support the shortfalls at the Beacon.
You talking about the board?
Correct.
Wow. Y'all do that, y'all should let us know some kind of way to see how much money. And it didn't top $200,000 this year?
No, ma'am. Well, in past years, we've had, obviously, the expenses have come down over the years. This year, our expenses were kind of capped because of COVID when we shut the theater down.
Okay.
But typically, summer months are difficult months because of outdoor concert season. Now, this year will be obviously different if we don't, depending upon how COVID affects things. But in the past, we've had shows where we've had an artist booked here, but then there's a free concert at another venue, and we don't have that many people. So summertime is a sparse time for the theater that we typically have to manage those ups and downs through. We've had a few before COVID. We had a few, pretty really good shows this year, but summertime is usually a difficult time for the theater.
Right. And so the people that don't request their money, those monies go back to the general fund, right?
Yes, ma'am. But here we'll make sure that we allocate the funding, if that's what council wants to do, for those agencies that requested funding but have not asked for it yet.
We already approved it last year, so that's what I'm saying.
Yep.
We've already approved it, so they should get the money.
Yep. Yes, ma'am.
Not to vote for anything else differently.
Yeah,
That's all.
we'll reach out and make sure everybody gets their money.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Counselor Randolph?
Thank you. March, there's been some talk throughout, I think, the chamber doing their tourism and stuff, and whether or not we could actually partner with Prince George to do our own tourism for those two counties, because I think that there has been discussion about the lack of help or direction on part. Is that something that I have an issue with funding part, which is the area tourism, simply because we pay them $30,000, and that sounds like a lot. Well, in marketing, it's not really, but it's still a lot for us to get. Are we paying a similar amount to all the other localities that are in the part package, I guess? Is everybody paying that amount?
So the majority of our regional, say Gateway or PART or the Creator Planning District Commission,
Yeah.
those items are typically done on a formula dealing with population.
Yeah.
So Chesterfield is paying more than obviously we are.
Yeah.
We're paying more than maybe say if Surrey's at the table, then Surrey. It just depends on who's there as to how much they're paying. So that would be how we've done things in this region with regard to funding the region. We've always just used a population-based formula, and it seemed to work in order to get the funding. So you don't want to overly burden a smaller community that may not be able to afford a $50,000 payment.
No. Do we know how much of the 30,000 that we pay actually goes to salaries versus marketing?
No, there is no breakdown of the individual communities' expenses as to how they're allocated. It's in their budget. It's just shown in one line item as local contributions. And then the budget's developed from there.
Since I have an issue with this, I don't know if any of the other counselors do, but we don't hear a lot about what they do for us. Before, is there some background information you could bring to us about how much they have done for Hopewell in particular? And could help us understand better whether these dollars are well spent or not? Just, something to give us a little bit more background. And also, I have yet to, I don't think that we've been provided the letters that you have gotten from anybody requesting monies, but could we get a list of that, how much they're requesting? Or
Yeah,
did-
we can, if, I thought they were in one of the packets that we provided, and if not, we can get you just we can scan the letters to council.
What they
Okay, go ahead. Does anybody know, did they see them and
Miss-
how old are they? Because I don't remember seeing them.
So Mr. Terry was trying to say something.
Okay.
I think they were somewhere.
Was that you, Mrs. Pelham, that was talking?
I was
Yeah, I
just
thought so.
how they requested is in under CY revised budget. That's where they get that number from. That's
Oh,
the
wait.
quote,
What
yeah.
Councilor Randolph is talking about early on in this project, we asked for this information to be in the packet. I have to go back through and see the hard copies, but along this lines, we also asked for justifications about what they did with the money they received last year. Did anybody try to get that information from these outside agencies?
We haven't gotten that information, so if,
Well, I think I find that very helpful if we do. You may not have the time to do it, but certainly I think that would always be something that would be very helpful. That used to be part of the application process when they asked for it. People complained that the application process was too long, but I still feel that if we're going to give money to outside agencies, we should not ever assume how much ever we like organizations or don't like them as to what they're using the money for. I think we should always ask for justification. That's just my opinion. Let me move on because I have one more thing that I want to say that I have a concern about, and that is the downtown partnership. Not that I have a concern about them, but I have a concern about the 70,000 that we have been sending to them every year. And that was an initial agreement with Main Street that we would support the downtown partnership or the Main Street program for at least 5 years. And with Evan pretty much being gone from that position and them not finding someone, would this be a good time to change up how we do this? I know from being on the EDA, we always, when we had an economic development deal anywhere in the city, we always checked with the economic development department here at the city. It wasn't always done that way with the downtown partnership and their economic development. So would that possibly be the time to bring that position maybe in-house and put it somewhere in maybe economic development? I don't know how anybody else feels, but what I mean by that is to, in the past few years, I know that Rec and Parks has done most of the setup and things for the downtown partnerships events. They could probably still do that. And in fact, I think that the plan was for the last Butts on Broadway, even though Evan was questioning whether he wanted to do it again. I think that the Rec and Parks director had decided, Mr. Reed Miller had decided that he would go ahead and do it had it gone again this year. It was going to be delayed a little, but still, we were looking at having them go ahead and do it, and they were getting all the expenses. So maybe taking this money, this 70,000, splitting it between, Mr. Reed Miller to continue some of the downtown events and having the board to be an advisory board, and then to bring some of that those duties in-house to economic development and handle it that way. To me, that would seem to be still supporting Main Street, having, I don't know, I think Stacy is part-time, given part of that money to her to go full-time, and a big part of her job responsibility would be to work with the downtown vendors and owners and that whole program, and see if that can work with the help and in conjunction with an advisory board for downtown, the same one they've got now. Just my thoughts. We could save some money. I don't know how much. We'd have to figure that out, but that's my thought on that. And save that and still have economic development being done, as well as the attention to detail for the vendors and business owners downtown. And I think that is all the issues that I have with anything that is on. Oh, the one other thing that I would like to say is we have asked repeatedly to meet with the Beacon Board. I would still like to do that and have a discussion with them as to what abilities and what focus that they do as a board. I think that that is something that we need to understand a little better. I would like to see if in future that board has some function to do a little more than what they're doing now, and to stay on top of the financial aspects of their vendor, so that the city does not have to babysit. But that's just my opinion, as is all of this. But thank you. I'm through. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Denton?
Yes, I had to step away for a minute, but I don't think you discussed anything about the Virginia Gateway. Wasn't there something about they were making changes? Are they still going to need the same amount of money with the changes that they're making in the Virginia Gateway?
Yes, Councillor Denton, that was brought up early on in the meeting. Councillor Randolph asked Mr. Altman if they had returned the funds, and Mr. Altman said not that he knows of, and she asked if they had a letter or some communication. He said not that he knows of.
I just didn't put the two together. I'm sorry.
Okay. Was that your only question?
Well, I was just curious about the Petersburg aging. I noticed we got 10,000 in there.
Councillor Denton, is there a way that you can adjust, because like your phone is going in and out? I only could make out what you were saying last time because I heard bits and pieces.
Okay, can you, maybe I'm too close. Can you hear me better now?
Yes, that's better.
Okay. The Petersburg aging, is this something new that we started this year?
No. No.
Mr. Altman?
I can say that I know in past years, obviously not here, but I know from my previous time with the city, we always provided funding to the Petersburg area on agency on aging to support issues within our community for our elderly population. So they may have made a request this year that they hadn't in the past to pick back up, or I'm not sure, but why the funding wasn't there. But we've done business with the Petersburg area agency on aging for years in the past. So, and they provide a good service to our citizens.
I could probably share a little bit more. I don't really know why it's added here unless they put in a new request. If you recall, early on when we was going through the boards and commissions for appointment, we did not have a HOPO representative on this board. And then council took the action to appoint someone to the board. And we actually have an unresolved issue on that because the person that we appointed is not who the board wants to have appointed. So either way it goes, there seems to be the city being re-engaged with this. And so I think maybe they must have probably put a new request in, but for years we didn't have a representative on the board until recently.
That would make sense.
But they gave us services though.
Correct, yes. And Counselor Denton, do you have any other questions?
No, I thank you, Councilman Booth. Thank you.
Okay, Counselor Holloway, Vice Mayor Bennett, do you have any questions?
I do not.
Okay, I have wrote down some questions. For the med flight, did they ask for a reduction in their allocation from the city because it's reduced again?
That would be typically the amount that we put in what they sent. I think they do send us a letter every year, but we'll check. But I believe they did send a letter. I do recall. So we'll check on that flight's money.
Okay, and for Pat, I think, you know, I've spoke about this before. I think we need to look at that relationship with the bus system. For example, when COVID-19 first started being an issue in Virginia, they shut the bus system down. I don't recall getting notified or council being notified that they had shut down the bus system. And that became a whole issue with the governor's office and others having to be involved to say you couldn't shut down the bus system. We pay for our route $218,000. Where are we at in the decision-making when they're making changes to the services that we are paying for?
We are not in the decision-making process. They made the decision to shut down service. We did not know that they made that decision to shut down service. Then I got a phone call apologizing for not being informed. And then within, I think they shut down service like midweek. And then by the following week, they started service back up. But no, we were not involved in that decision-making processes. Pat is a department over with the city of Petersburg, and we're just, we're a vendor, if you will, getting service from them. So we weren't in that process. And unfortunately, they didn't notify us, but like I said, I got a phone call apologizing for that. And then they picked service back up within the week's time.
Okay, I think that we need to try to find a way to establish a partnership so we can be informed about the route and other changes that they're making, especially if we have a whole circular that we're paying that much money for.
Well, as you know, it changes to the route itself we make. We request those changes for the addition of stops or, a route to
Right.
loop, a change in the actual route. We dictate those, and those are then reflected in either an increase or decrease in our fee based upon if we're reducing or adding additional stops.
Mhm.
But their decision to stop service for the day, that we're not a part of that decision-making process.
Right, and so that's why I just said we needed to try to establish communication, period, about anything regarding the bus system, because we pay a significant amount to have services provided in Hopewell. So if there's going to be changes, alterations that impact our route, then we need to be informed and involved. So I don't know what that looks like, but we need to really have a conversation regarding that, because it's not the first time there's been something regarding the bus system that we weren't notified of.
Okay.
So I don't know what recommendations you have, but but we certainly need to find a way to be at the table for whoever's making decisions over there. I don't know if they have a board that oversees them. I don't really know their setup. If they do,
Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No. I mean, I know they have a director and department, but if they have an advisory board, then we should have a seat there, on that board. But I don't really know how they actually function. You used to work there, so how are they set up?
I don't recall there being an advisory board. It functions as a city department with a director that reports to the deputy director for operations. And when I was there, the director of Pat reported to me, and we did not have, to my knowledge and memory, an advisory board or a board of directors or whatever that sat around and made decisions with regards to the transit operation and how its day-to-day functions. So it's probably functioning as a city department with vertical control through the city manager's office down. And those decisions operationally are made by the director through consultation with the deputy city manager and the city manager. So
Okay.
we
So-
can have a conversation with Petersburg about if there's an advisory panel. Obviously, as being a paying customer, we need to have a seat there, or what level of involvement, at a minimum, notification that we get should any service disruptions occur prior to the service absent an emergency.
Mhm.
There's something that happens, a bus crashes or whatever, that's different. But if they know that because something like COVID they're going to shut service down, we need to know 24 to 48 hours in advance so we can notify our citizens that the bus won't be running. And it isn't just we find out because people are standing at the stop and the bus never comes.
Yes, and there's two other things to look into when it comes to Pat. I know I met with you regarding some of the feedback from citizens regarding shelters on the station, and also signs up to say what the routes are in Hopewell. When you go to like Richmond or some other places, or even places in Petersburg, I believe you can see the actual route at the station, so you know where you're going. Because right now the information isn't. You got to go to their website, and I know we added it to our website to link to that. But those are two things. And when you checked on it, you told me that they were working on some type of branding plan, and then to hold tight to revisit that. I don't know if that's going to be pushed back now because of COVID-19, or if they just never came back to us on this issue. But can you make a note when you talk to them about building a relationship of communication, that we circle back to see where they are with that?
Spam, got it written down.
Okay, and the last part regarding Pat, they also provide services for people to go to the Veterans Care Center. And then from my knowledge, they provide free travel for youth. I don't know who pays for that, if it's coming from the operations of the Petersburg or whatever, but I want to know, I know that they're not carried through to Hopewell in terms of the youth part, but for the care centers, I believe it is. I checked on that yesterday for a constituent, but can we see what would it cost us, or how could we see if we could participate in that youth service as well, so that single car household or whatever can be able to get their children on the buses to be able to go by the community center and other things like that once we start to get back to normal society.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing I had on here in terms of PART, I've been very vocal about PART. So Councilor Randolph, I agree with you. I've brought that up early on in the budget cycle regarding tourism for the city. We've been bringing this up for the past couple of budget cycles, and there was a plan, I guess, to make some changes to how we do tourism. We were supposed to have a conversation about that at an agenda meeting, but things, I guess, got off course with COVID, so that adjusted everything. I agree that we don't get, in my opinion, our money's worth from PART. If you look at their advertisement, they mention us, but it's nowhere near equivalent to what I think they could be mentioning about Hopewell. So I think it's really important for us to put more money into public affairs' budget so they can tell our story, as Mr. Bragg said early on. Because some of the press and the promotion that we could be doing, we're really not doing. So I don't have an issue with reducing or cutting that if we can. I know we wait on more information from the city manager, but I'm an ally in that part. In terms of the schools, I know we already asked for justification letters. I remember we talked about this last year to fund the schools equally, but if you're going to get us the letters again, then I'll just check to see what they asked for. But we did ask for the justifications of what they spent their money on, so that way we know it's not a waste of time given to these organizations. Do you know roughly how many organizations or how much money was left over in this from last year that wasn't removed because people didn't submit their letters requesting their money?
I don't know that off the top of my head. It looks like in last year's budget there at the end, all of the funding was dispersed from the last FY line item.
But I know you don't have the top of your head, but can you get it for this current year? How much is left over for those, like Council Plum just brought up, that haven't gotten their money because they didn't submit their letters?
Right, yeah, we'll look at that. It looks right now, it looks like for current year actuals, we spent out 1.8 and we had essentially 2 million budgeted in for the current year.
Mhm.
So about 200, a little less than $200,000 is outstanding.
Yeah, so we should see why, when they when they submit their what they've done with it, then we can see, if they don't have, they can't submit anything about what they've done with the money if they never collected it. So it makes you question, do they really need all of this support?
Mhm. Well, I can tell you, like, for instance, Richard Bland, one of their board members came in and met with me and said, we really would hope that the city would consider funding us. And I pulled out last year's budget and said, well, we did. You need to make the request to receive your funding. And they said, oh, well, we'll do that. So I don't know that they had been, in some of these things, historically, we funded it and we keep funding it with or without the letter. So some we have a letter for, but there are some agencies that do not make the requests. I know, like, right out of the gate, I can guarantee you in July, City of Refuge will have a letter in hand and they'll request their $50,000 because that's what they did in the current year. Right out of the gate, out of the first fiscal year, they made their request and we submitted those funds and cut the check for those funds to them. So we'll check on that as you and Mrs. Pelham have those information that you've requested, and we'll follow back up.
Okay, and the last one is the Beacon. We, like Councilor Randolph said, we have been asking to meet with them. I know the city attorney is swamped with a lot of other things, but when we get to that conversation, the Beacon LLC was established just to oversee the tax credits. And once that was over with, the Beacon LLC and the renovation, and that's been completed for years now. So the way that the board was established was for that purpose. And that's what I've been trying to have on the agenda for us to talk about. What are we going to do with the LOC itself and the Beacon? Because the last council discussed options on dissolving the LOC because, one, there's no purpose for that board as it's written. But then two, if we want to do something different, reestablish another board, the city contract out the vendor and keep it the way it is or whatever. But we need to go back to how this was all structured when we had that conversation so that everyone is on the same page and we know the baseline that we're operating from when we move forward. Because I certainly agree that there needs to be someone overseeing the financials. And I think that it needs to be, we just need to have some adjustments. Then also, we've been asking for their marketing plan and their business plan. We've never received that since we've asked for it. And this goes back to the former council. So definitely think that we need to do something in terms of meeting and then to look at how we can adjust how the operation is and our relationship with the Beacon. Councilor Denton and Councilor Pelham, I don't know if Councilor Denton, is that your same hand?
Yeah.
Okay, that's fine. Do you have something to ask?
Nope, I'm good, thank you.
Councilor Pelham?
Yes, I would like to have the council really to consider not doing anything on the downtown partnership. I spoke with Miss Rita Joyner, and they're in the process, like I think Charlie mentioned, they interviewing right now. And so it would not be feasible for us to drop all the things that we've done to downtown because it's just been too many dollars invested and to give up on that. It's some type of provision. I think that the person, it can't be run by the city. If I remember from the old grant long time ago when we first were designated as Main Street. But I mean, it's an investment that we said we were going to do for the long haul, and just to turn our backs now and let Main Street go, it just wouldn't make sense to me with all the millions, multi-million dollars that we've invested down there. I don't know, and because they're interviewing someone with probably, I guess, a more extensive experience, let's let that, I think we should let that happen. And before we do anything, we definitely need to speak with Ms. Joyner to see where they are with everything and not just drop it like a hot potato. So please consider that, counselors, we got to talk to her before we just say we're just not going to fund the downtown partnership. Okay. And the other thing is the bus route. I think if y'all speak, if Marsh, Mr. Alban, if you talk to Herbert Bragg, when I was involved with mayor 3 or 4 years ago, whatever it was, he was the one that kept closely in contact with that director over in Petersburg. There was something going on, he would always, during my tenure anyway, he would always keep in touch with her, Mr. Bragg. And I think he would have something on that. And also in this budget, the Petersburg Aging Agency has $10,000 that was budgeted for this year. They just haven't looked like used any of it. Again, that's one of those agencies that didn't get the letter or whatever. And then they are budgeted for 10 grand next year. So I don't understand the question about why they're not funding, but they do have 10,000 in the budget for next year as well. Is what I can read anyway. Is that incorrect, Mr. March?
No, ma'am, that's correct. They have 10,000 in our current year budget and 10,000 in the proposed budget.
Yeah. So they should be okay as long as they get their money for the end of this year and we reissue next year.
Yes, ma'am.
But partnership is a big thing. We need to talk about that more before any decision is made.
Mhm.
That's it, Mayor.
Okay, thank you, Councilor Randolph.
Me? I
Yes.
couldn't hear you.
Uh-huh.
Okay, thanks. That's a good point, Councilor Pelham. Ward 1 includes the downtown, so I do not want to leave them high and dry. I have been, since my EDA times, have been trying to work to, help things downtown. I still want to. I don't know what the agreement says, so maybe Mr. Dane or the city manager can look that up to see if the coordinator has to be an outside position. I know that the initial agreement did say that we had to fund them for 5 years. My concern is we're trying to cut and make a lean budget out of this. And while they don't have anybody that they have hired, I thought this might be the time that we would step back, reorganize, and look to see what's going on anyway. The city is absorbing a lot of their costs, and the Main Street program really should be more independent, in my opinion, at this point in time. It's been in place for quite a while, and that's the goal of the Main Street program, is to have them be an independent program. And with us continually automatically giving them $70,000 each year, I'm not sure that's happening. But I do not want to see them go away. I want the Main Street program, of course, to continue. I want the city to support in some ways, but I'm not sure that a constant $70,000 is the way to do it. That's just my only thought. Not abandonment, just reorganization, Ms. Pelham. So hope that eases your mind a little bit. Thank you. I'm done.
Thank you.
I will, while we wait for that information to be distributed in terms of Main Street, I'll share that I too thought that they had to be separate from the city and just have a partner in local government. On the VHCD's website regarding Main Street eligibility, it just says, I will make sure we have a thorough conversation, but just for the purposes of right now, demonstrate active partnership with at least one local government partner. The municipality within which a Main Street program operates benefits from the revitalization efforts made on behalf of the historic district. Increase entrepreneurship, private investment, social activity restores economic vitality in the heart of the community. Fiscal and in-kind support from the local government is critical, but not the sole support of this Main Street program. Communities are required to provide a written accountability of the support provided by their local governments as a component of eligibility, as well as ongoing support. And then it goes into the other criteria. I'll send this out so you can look over it, and while I wait for Mr. Dane to get the other information, but it also has here that I don't believe that local governments can be direct partners of it as well, but I'll send this to you while I wait for the other information if that helps.
Madam Mayor, I don't
Yeah.
have a hand to raise.
Yes.
I am aware of a couple of localities where they still have a board, a Main Street program board, and the city works closely with them and funds the operation, but they actually have a city staffer that is the person that does that function. We'll double check to make sure that's not an issue, but I'm pretty certain that the financial support from the city is the important piece, but you can actually provide in-kind service in the form of a staffer. But I'll double check that to make sure, but I'm pretty certain there are several localities in Virginia who have that particular format right now.
Yeah, that would be good.
Services to the organization, but not necessarily under the city, right?
Can't hear you.
I was asking, what does he mean when he says in-kind donation is the work of the employee, but not necessarily having the Main Street fall under the locality? Is that what you're saying? Because I can see that working.
That's what I was saying. So I didn't really know, but I just want us to look into it. So maybe if they come back with, I just have an issue with this and I want to resolve it some way that it works for everybody, but that it works better for the city funding wise. So I'm okay with maybe a little change of stuff, but since we, you know, if we can just come back with some information for all of council and we can kind of all talk about it and decide what's the best way, that would work for me.
I'll research and get a definitive answer for y'all.
That'd be good.
Thank you. And we'll just make a
Thank
note
you.
to add this to that other work session where we capturing all the other stuff that we need to go back and talk about.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Altman okay, good. Ms. Altman, can you add that to your list? And Councilor Randolph, were you done before I call on Councilor Pelham?
Yes, ma'am, I am. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, I think the chairperson, Ms. Joyner, needs to join the conversation too before we end it. And she did share with me that they just received in the last week or two a $15,000 grant to help the businesses out downtown. And in kind, of course, can be anything from employment to actual rental or whatever. But the city does have to, I would think, want to provide something because they are about, huh?
We do.
I know we do, but that's what I'm saying. That is the thing. If you want the Main Street to be viable, of course, and I'm partial to it a lot. It's just too much money that's gone downtown to let it all go. And if we give them an opportunity to bring someone else on afresh to keep the revitalization going, I think it'll be a good thing. I really don't want the city staff to be involved personally, but whatever the majority says, but right now.
Hopefully we can talk about that maybe.
Say again?
I said, hopefully maybe we can talk about that, all of us.
I'm just saying, just my personal view. All right, that's all I have.
Thank you. Is there any other questions regarding outside agencies? Those joining by phone? I'll ask Mr. Altman, can you just repeat the stuff that you have for this as a takeaway that we need to follow up on?
Here we have a request for the Hopewell related activities of part, the scanned letters of request from the agencies, and kind of justification. So I made a note with regard to an application next year, make sure there's a justification for use of funds in the application process. Coming down, we need to have a meeting with the Beacon Board. I think that was mentioned more than once. And then you had asked about the reduction of MedFlight. If they actually requested less funding than was they this year versus last. We had some discussion around our involvement with the operational decisions over at Pat, additional shelters with maps, which kind of isn't really a budget issue at this point in time, but in addition, and then the free service for youth, what would the cost be for that? Again, what did the schools, John Tyler, Bland, and BSU use the money for? Discussion about the Beacon, same thing, with having a meeting with them in the future, where we go, how we just, that whole, what does that look like question. And then the last item here was a meeting with HDP to discuss the future, but also Ms. Randolph asked for a copy of the agreement. And I don't know if any subsequent agreements were done, but I found on my portable hard drive the original agreement that was signed in December of 2011, which committed the city to 3 years worth of funding of $70,000 a year. So I was going to give that to Mr. Dane so he can supply that information and the other information that he has to y'all.
Can you just email it to us?
Sure.
And the only thing I would say is for all the outside agencies, if it's not like a government entity, can you just check with all of them what they spent their last year's money on to see if they respond?
Okay. And looking at them, just looking at them, I'm the Chamber of Commerce is not really a government agency. So question would be, would you want, so food pantry and feed more on here? I mean, do you want?
I mean, I really want to say all, but if you have the resources, I would like all. If not, then.
Well, like Riverside Criminal Justice, the State Health Department, just D19, those are our payments to them for the services they provide to the community.
Right. And that's what I mean when I meant government entities, like the ones that we can't change.
Okay. All right. We'll try. We'll see what we can do to track them down. And if we can't get them all right now, we'll make sure that we track them down and provide that information as we get it. We don't get it all between now and whenever the budget's adopted. If we can get it all, we'll make sure we report that back out and have an application for next year, which includes what they used, if they received previous money, what they used it for, and then what they plan on using the money for that they're requesting in the upcoming budget year.
Perfect.
Okay.
Anything overlooked, y'all? Everybody?
Y'all, I like that.
Okay, you can proceed, please.
So next up is council, and I'm gonna let y'all talk about that one.
You say council for last.
Council for last.
I agree. We need to get to the other one.
So then I would just say it's, we can do the clerk, the attorney, or office on youth. Those are the three remaining, and I have no qualm as to what order y'all want to take them in.
Clerk, attorney, office on youth council, because it's like down the screen.
Okay, then I will say up front for Ms. Brown, she didn't create the budget this year for the clerk's office, so go easy on her. But she is here to discuss the budget requests if y'all have any questions for her.
Counselor Denton?
Yes, the service contract, what does that consist of? We've come down a lot, but we're still budgeting $2,500 for it. And it looks like we've only spent.
You're very muffled, Janice.
You what?
Counselor
You're very
Denton,
muffled.
yeah, your phone is muffled.
Okay, I'm doing the same thing to my life. Can you hear me better if I sit back?
No, it's the same.
I don't know what to do. It's the same thing I've been doing.
Okay, that's good. That's good. Right where you are.
Okay. Okay. All right. The service contract. It looks like the current year actuals, we've only spent $186.65. Yet we have in the budget $2,500. What do we have as a service contract? What is that money spent for?
Just so I can make sure for everyone else, I understood what she said. She said for service contracts, It looks like we spent $186.65, but yet next year's budget at $2,500. What would we use service contracts for? And I think what does she plan to use that for? Correct, Counselor Denton?
Yes, very good. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Well, isn't that, oh,
Ms. Brown,
can I respond?
after she has a chance to speak, she's the one being asked the question. 1 second.
No, she wasn't here.
I know, but this is her budget still. So Counselor Pelham, please wait for your turn, or we can defer to you if Counselor Denton's fine, but she has the floor and she asked Ms. Brown, and Ms. Brown needs to respond. If she doesn't know, that's fine.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so I really didn't get a chance before this meeting to sit down with anyone to go through this budget for city clerk. With me only being in this office since February of this year, I'm not really familiar with a lot of these items on this budget. So I unfortunately would not be the, I guess, correct person to ask for certain items, the service contract being one of them, as far as what that's for, with me being very unfamiliar with some of the things in this budget.
Thank you.
Can share a little bit something and we can go back in minutes to pull the records. For service contracts, the clerk uses for when she had wanted to bring in outside support to get the minutes caught up and the ordinances caught up. But then also she used that sometimes for when she had her shredding services, because she pays her own shredding as well, and some of the other fees that she needed to do to close out some of the items. And we can get Ms. Brown to work with finance to pull the receipts from that to give to you. But she did use this for outside help sometimes. And Counselor Pelham, you had something else for this too, right?
I thought we used it for the consultant that used to try to get us together to as well.
She used that for miscellaneous and council's budget for the retreat. Is that what you're talking about?
Yes.
Yeah, that was pulled out of our budget, or it
Okay.
should have been,
Mm.
because that wasn't a clerk office fee.
Okay. And well, like I said, we go through the, what I was gonna say as well, I don't know what bonus was for, but I would recommend that in the city clerk's office be, since it wasn't utilized this year, looks like that we delete that item. Cause I don't remember in my years that we ever gave anyone a bonus of any kind, for anything. And,
Counselor Pelham, can you just wait 1 second? I'll just ask you to piggyback off of service contracts for Counselor Denton's question. Let me make sure she's done with the floor, okay?
okay.
You're okay. Counselor Denton, did you have another question?
The only other thing that I was questioning, of course, if in our search we get a certified clerk, I guess we would just take the money out of the mileage, travel, lodging, and all of that, if we don't need it, and put it in salary or something like that.
Certainly I can't speak for all the council. I'll do a round robin, but I would think that that money would need to stay there because you still have Ms. Brown as a deputy and she is eligible to participate in the both clerk associations, so she can start her process of becoming trained as well. And I know that obviously we're waiting for information regarding travel citywide, but we should certainly look at saving some funds for maybe when they have webinars or something like that that she has to pay for to get her credits towards certification. But I'll do a round robin for council if you want me to talk about that part, or do you want to wait until we have that travel conversation? Because Mr. Altman was supposed to be collecting information from all departments regarding future travel needs.
I don't need this answer tonight, but I'm I do have some questions about it.
Okay, well, Ms. Brown, can you make a note to double check with the International Clerk Association and the Virginia Clerk Association for upcoming, their plan for certification, and if they have on their website, I checked it recently, they have some information up there, but not, I don't know, in depth, because I didn't go through all of it, but if they're planning to do mostly webinars for certification to see what those average costs are. So when we have that travel discussion, you at least have this information to be able to give back to council for Council Denton's question.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Any other questions, Councilor Denton?
No, I think that's it. Thank you.
You're welcome. Councilor Pelham?
Yeah, the only thing I say is that in her budget, since we don't know what bonus line was used for, that look like an item that we can delete from the budget for next year, that $1,500. And we didn't use also management consultant, so I don't know what that was used for, but if it's something we don't need, I would recommend that also be deleted. And the rest of it, again, with the travel thing, just try to ascertain. I'm thinking the whole city will only have costs that will cover for conference, where the line for conference and travel would converge into distant learning type money, whatever it costs for those webinars, and keep those items viable and put zero. But she needs travel money if she's going to travel in between citywide. So I don't know if she's done that yet. Has she go to other buildings? If she travel, take her car, then she has to have some money for travel, for internal travel to be reimbursed for.
And that's the mileage line item.
Yes, that would have to stay. Is that mileage travel PUBTRN? Is that what, well, no, it has a separate item for mileage, okay. So that mileage would have to probably stay for local. What is travel published train? You know what that is, Mr. Altman, anybody?
Travel.
That's when we use public transportation, like flights, train, rental cars or whatever, that's what that is. Mileage is if we get reimbursed, kind of what you were describing with using your vehicle for other places.
Okay.
So the line that you're talking about for distance learning, that would be CONV dash or whatever, CONF for conference and conventions. That would be the most appropriate line item for like distant learning, because that's where you pay your registration for events from.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, I understand. All right, that's all I have. Everything else looks good to me.
Okay, Councilor Randolph?
The question I had was that back in February or early part of March, the clerk at that time sent us her budget and our budget for this year. She sent it via email to all of us, and she sent it via, I think, what she felt was needed or before COVID broke out. Okay. After she left, within the first week, I called her and went over that budget to find out what some of these line items were. Now, Mr. Altman, did you get that budget from Ms. Arrington at that time?
Probably not.
No, ma'am. Only thing that I have is what was submitted through Munis and for that. And so I think she may have sent that out for council review and discussion where she submitted it.
Okay, because this
I can go and look in my emails to see if she sent me a copy of it.
You wouldn't have. I mean, why?
What?
You wouldn't have sent him one. He doesn't.
Well, I didn't know that, so I was asking, okay? And because she sent all of us one and none of us are acting like we've seen it. Because I went through that budget and it looks very different from this one. There was miscellaneous in her budget, and I don't think, and there was quite a bit that had been used as well as done, and there's nothing on here that shows any miscellaneous. So I was gonna say that we needed to get rid of it anyway, but how can we have a budget that looks so different from what was actually used last year? Because
Well,
this does
So you-
not accurately show what was used according to what I was given or and the rest of council were given from last year.
So Counselor Randolph, this question is for Mr. Altman, correct?
That's
Because
correct.
you're pretty much asking why did the clerk give us one version and what we have here is completely different.
Well, not 100% different, but a lot of differences.
Well, you know, I'm trying to, I mean to say it's different. I want to say completely, but it's different.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, because this one does not have anything on it for miscellaneous. And I know in talking to Ms. Arrington, I asked her why she had a miscellaneous, and we've had that discussion here. So if she had miscellaneous last year and spent out of it, then why wouldn't we reflect that on here? I'm just a little confused, Mr. Altman. Can you help me with that?
If I had what you all were looking at, it would be
Okay.
helpful.
And
Uh,
I don't have the capability of sending it to you right now. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Because I'm on my phone. But I think we need to look into that. I don't have any problems with this budget, but I certainly had some things that I felt like, and I'm not sure there, Ms. Pelham, and you don't have to answer me. It's just a general, generic question. We have talked about doing away with travel completely.
right.
And so here we're talking about letting the clerk have travel, but others not. So I think that travel is gonna, I believe, Mr. Altman, that's already on your issues list that council's gonna discuss as a whole.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, as long as it's on that list, then we can talk about it as we go in the next issues. When we get to the issues, then it's not a problem for me. But I just think we have to be somewhat consistent with who's going to have travel and who's not, and what's the requirement. But
And I was-
anyway, I just wanted to mention that unfortunately for me, I used the one that we were emailed, and so I'm not quite sure how this is differing, but wanted to bring that up. Thank you. I'm done.
Can I answer? My hand's up.
What-
anyway.
I can see, hold on one second. I'm just gonna let everybody know, I'm pulling up the budget she's talking about. So go ahead, Counselor Pelham, while I switch over the screen.
Well, I was gonna say is that when we had gotten back to the total end of the conference, I mean, the end of the summation of all our budget, I was gonna suggest the monies that people travel locally will of course have to be included. So I would have been more consistent toward the end and not wipe out all the travel. But I mean, the travel I was talking about is when people get on a plane or train to go to, I don't think we will be sending anyone for the toward the end of the year to another conference. That's the travel I was saying we all need to eliminate. But I didn't totally realize that local people get reimbursed for locally traveling as well. But also miscellaneous, all we have to, Mr. Altman has to do is go into Munis and say, find out what if there was a miscellaneous for his last 3 years plus this fiscal year. He can, Mr. Terry, is he on the line? He can look it up and send it to us tomorrow. Or you can email what you have, because I probably won't find it in my emails, what Miss Arrington sent us back in February. And it's different. If it's different, it's something she may have been keeping on the side, but the true reflection will come from Munis in these three and show what from fiscal year 17 all the way up to date, exactly what was spent in miscellaneous. Why it's missing, I don't know. Munis print out everything else. Why it didn't print out there? If Mr. Terry on the line, Mr. Altman.
Yes, ma'am. But looking at what the mayor has put up on the screen, it is exactly what we have in your packet. All the
No,
same line items.
And it's
I
different
didn't see furniture. I didn't see,
Add.
at
So
the very bottom is furniture,
Right.
$1,000.
I didn't see that on my screen previously.
Oh, it's-
So just for clarification,
They're not, we can't hear you.
oh, sorry. I mute myself back again. Sorry. I said, I know Counselor Randolph still has the floor and she can ask her questions with this Excel sheet. I just want to answer Council Denton's question. I was correct when I said it was a temp worker that she had hired for service contracts, and that's in the yellow section right now while we wait for the other information. And the other section, what Councilor Plum was talking about, I said trips related to certification. As you can see, she also has that highlighted too. So Councilor Randolph, I have this on the screen. If you want to ask more questions about this, this is what I last have.
And it's exactly the same.
Okay.
You can
I
go back.
thought there were more, it looked like there were more differences. I didn't see at the bottom the furniture fixtures, and I knew that that was something that I wanted to cut. Not because I believe what she sent us was,
What is,
I wish I could find mine. I'll find mine, and if I have questions, I'll go back to Mr. Altman, but mine was slightly
well, the one thing is different, Ms. Randolph, is office supplies on this.
supplies.
Office supplies is different. All the thing I can see that's different from the sheets that we have.
Yes, and I asked Miss Arrington about that, and she said last year they had to order red books to get everything in together, and that red books are very expensive, which she put a note on here, and I didn't understand red books, so she explained them to me, so that they still need 2 more, and that there's special paper that goes into them. So
Yes,
that's why she
yes.
had gone up, because she had done some of that work last year. I think she said 4 of them. And then there were 2 more still probably left to do immediately for this year. And that she kind of explained that to me. So I didn't have that much problem, although didn't understand the paper, but okay. And the conferences and travel were basically for her to finish out her certification, which she had to take for trips, which was going to be different from what we probably needed for this year. So I was going to suggest we cut that. And then the telephone, fax, video was similar to what I had asked the Commonwealth's attorney. What Ms. Arrington had told me was that was just a number that appeared, and she felt that that was put into her budget by IT because she had no idea what that was paying for. But my understanding is that amount, does she still need $1,500 because we're changing to VoIP, and that should be from IT, not her. And then the advertising was going to stay the same simply because of what we do. And then there was another fee for the I guess it's in our budget. Sorry. Okay. So I apologize, city manager and Mr. Terry. I was thinking there was a lot more differences, but it appears to be the same. So I apologize for making that insinuation, but definitely from this was what I was working from.
Okay, Mr. Terry asked to speak, and then
I thought I had the floor.
no, actually, Councilor Randolph had a floor, and you were asking her questions, which you.
I was speaking, somebody interjected, and then I never got to finish.
I thought she had the floor. Okay, I'm sorry. Well, then Councilor Plum, then after you, Mr. Terry. Okay.
One issue is that if somebody would just run off miscellaneous from fiscal year 2016 through 17 forward for the clerk's office and send it to us to see what they reflected for both city clerk and city council.
Yes, please.
We got it for city council, but not for the clerk's office. What our miscellaneous look like in the past.
Thanks. Okay, we'll write that down.
So could I get quick question to clarify?
Yes.
You don't want what the budget number was. Do you want that, but do you also want what the expenses were?
The expenses, yeah. The sheet of paper for, like on page 5, the miscellaneous issue. You know, it'll be the first column, fiscal year 3, 2, 1. It won't have a current year because she evidently didn't budget last. If she budgeted last year for it, it should come up. Mr. Terry will probably tell us next, but whatever he has on file for miscellaneous for the clerk's office for the last 3 or 4 years.
Okay, so from 17 through 20 if 20 is available.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And did you say you wanted that for both clerk and council?
No, we got councils. Councils is printed above.
Okay.
Hello,
I'm finished.
hello.
Hi, Mr. Terry. One moment. Let me make sure Council Palmer is complete. Are you done?
Finished, ma'am.
Okay, great. Sorry about that. Mr. Terry?
Yeah, I apologize. I had to come in and out because I was trying to help out a little earlier, and I realized that you all couldn't hear me. So I don't know what I missed, but let me clarify what I was going to at the point in time. The budget that I'm assuming Mrs. Randolph is looking at is really an Excel spreadsheet. And the budget that you all are looking at in the report, the city clerk did not enter her budget. That budget is a roll forward from last year. And then lastly, she does not have a miscellaneous in her budget in Munis. So hopefully that clarifies.
Yes, it does. Thank you so much.
He's
Okay,
never-
And I mentioned earlier, I think you might have dropped off. I mentioned the miscellaneous in council's budget for council that was asking about that. But you answered the
Yeah.
question regarding why the budgets are different is because she didn't enter it into Munis. So that clarifies that big issue.
Yeah, and so what Mrs. Randolph has is an Excel, and whatever she was responding to was from that basis. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Thank
you so much. Before I call the others, I do have a question, not question, but a follow-up on one statement. Then I see Councilor Denton has her hand up and then Councilor Pelham.
Take mine down.
The red books, I brought this up to council several times last year. This is one of the issues that I wanted to see resolved in the clerk's office. The red books are for the public, are our official records for the city. They're the minutes that we have after each council meeting. So what you have online is the virtual ones, and then we have the actual printed ones, and they go into what's called a red book, and they're supposed to be fireproof, and the mayor signs them. The minutes in the red books were not done from, I think, 2016 through now. And that was one of the items I was trying to get to have some resolution behind so that I can get them current and be able to sign them. The clerk started that process after October, and she sent council emails regarding to the projects I had asked her to work on. She got caught up to 18. And I remember a councilman, I brought one of the red books there and showed everyone that she had got caught up on that part, but we needed to get the rest of them caught up. That's still an ongoing project. And I actually have an item on the agenda I need council to discuss because I have not signed any minutes from 2019. And if we're going to have Ms. Brown stay in this role in the interim, she doesn't need to fall behind. She's doing a great job of doing the minutes timely, but we also need to make sure that the red books are done as well. And one of the issues that came out before the clerk had left was they ordered the wrong type of paper. They wasn't fireproof paper, so they had to go back and order more paper, but I don't know where she is with that project. That's something that really needs to be addressed so that the minutes, certainly after I leave my term as mayor, are current. And that's been one of the goals I have. So whatever cost needs to be put into the budget for them to purchase the appropriate paper to be able to complete the project really needs to be taken care of.
Madam Mayor, is that sounds like more of a current year issue also?
It absolutely is. It's one of the items I've been trying to address in the clerk's office. So I don't know if she has the current funding to be able to, number one, I don't know the status of it. Since the roles have changed, I don't really know. I'm sorry for my dog. I don't really know what's going on regarding that. And so I wanted to put on the agenda to get some resolution to this matter. Again, I did part of 2018 when she started the process before she left, but I don't know if she got the new paper, the correct paper in stock. I don't know if that's even being worked on. I don't know if we really need to bring in somebody else to help get that caught up. But what I do know is it is a serious issue that needs to be resolved because I know that IT has done a great job of getting our I forgot what recovery program in place in regards to if there's a computer crash or a server crash, we have something in place. But one of the things I've been trying to get corrected is our minutes. Many people know that our minutes were not on the city's website. That's one project I work with the clerk on to get them updated. Some of them are still not on the website. We have to get that addressed. But in that process, we learned that some of the minutes were not like, it was hard to find the minutes to even update them because the way they were stored. So it's a current project that needs to be resolved, so we can make sure our website is accurate and that all of our minutes are stored in one centralized location for us internally and for the public. But most importantly, that our books are done, because if there's a fire or something crazy happens, we won't have a written record for the city. And like I said, it went back to 2016. I got her to fix 2018. Through 2018, I've not signed anything for 2019, and here we are in 2020, and I still haven't anything. So I have that on a upcoming agenda for council to discuss on some approaches to address that. So Mr. Altman, if there is funding that we need to put aside with Ms. Brown to make sure she has the paper, I think we need to talk about that as well. And do you have any, you said, is it a current situation? Do you have any recommendations, or is that what your thought is too? Is a current year problem as well?
Oh, absolutely. So what I would say is, we'll work with the clerk to see if we can identify the paper that they have is indeed what is needed. And then if not, make sure we order the appropriate amount of paper for the current year, because we've got minutes that need to be done now, and any backlog and any minutes that were printed on the paper that wasn't correct need to be reprinted. So yeah, absolutely. We'll look to get with her and Ms. Brown and work to make sure we get the right paper. And if we can do it out of this year's budget, obviously we will. And if we can order more out of this year's budget to take burden off of next year's budget, we'll do that to make sure that we have what we need to ensure that, I would probably say, not only the minutes, but even the ordinance books.
Well, yeah, it's both of them. And that's why I was asking, that was another aspect that needed to be fixed in the clerk's office in terms of indexing as well, because that wasn't being done. So we need to go back and piece everything together that wasn't being done properly, so we can be able to have these books prepared. I have the red books that I was given. Like I said, it goes through part of 2018. And even in those books, there were some corrections that need to be done, because I was also signing, not for me, but for the former mayor. And so there's issues with some of the pages that's in the books that was provided, and some of the ordinances that were not present. So it's going to be it needs to be a project. So whenever you're ready to have that conversation, I can bring you up to speed, as well as Ms. Brown, and we can work on a path forward so we can get them signed and corrected, and make sure the minutes and everything else is right, and our index and Municode for the public is accurate as well.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Thank you. Just let me know when you're ready to have that talk.
Okay, anytime.
Okay. Thank you. Councilor Denton.
Just wanted to tell you that the proposed budget that Councilor Randolph was talking about was sent by Ronnie Arrington on February the 28th. That is
Yes,
the proposed 220 budget and the proposed 220 budget for clerk and council.
Yes, Councilor Denton, I don't think you're joining us with the screen. I have it on the screen, and I actually emailed it to council, the city attorney, Ms. Brown, and Mr. Altman. I emailed it 16 minutes ago, so it's fresh in everybody's email.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for making sure it was the right one too. Councilor Pelham.
I don't have anything, I'm sorry.
Okay, if there's nothing else with the clerk's budget, I can take this screen down if everyone is okay with that. While I'm taking this down, I'll put the other budget back on the screen. Mr. Altman, can you read back what we have for the takeaways for this, please? Mr. Altman, are you there?
I am here, but I'm talking to myself as I'm muted. So everyone gets a chance to do that every meeting. Let's see. Mrs. Denton discussed the service contracts. Wanting to know what those funds were used for. Mrs. Pelham had suggested the deletion of the bonus line item, the consultant line item, and then any adjustments to conventions and conferences to reflect webinars. Then we have a print of miscellaneous expenses for the clerk's office from 2017 through 2020, if there is any in 2020. And then the discussion of the fireproof paper for the red books.
Okay, does anyone have anything that was overlooked?
No.
Okay. Counselor Pelham?
I have my hand up.
Yes.
I'm sorry. I thought I put it down.
Okay, no problem. We're gonna go on to the city attorney's budget. I have that on the screen now for those who are joining us with the app. Ms. Robinson?
Yes, ma'am. Good evening, members of council, Madam Mayor, Mr. City Manager. I want to thank you all for giving me the opportunity to answer questions regarding my department's budget. I believe the one that was first proposed and is now before you is a reasonable budget, and it advances the mission of the office, which is to
Hello?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Now we can.
Okay, I'm sorry. I thought I had unmuted myself, but I started with just thanking you all for giving me the opportunity to present and answer questions regarding the department's budget. I believe the one that was originally proposed and the one that is before you tonight on the screen is a reasonable budget. I believe the amounts that are proposed advances the city attorney's mission, which is to serve the citizens of Hopewell by protecting the government purse. And we do that, I believe, by delivering high quality work and advice to the city council and city departments, including the manager's office. So rather than to just talk in general terms, I'm here to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Robinson. Does anyone have any questions regarding the city attorney's budget? Counselor Palm, go ahead if you have something to say. I know you're trying to find your raised hand symbol.
I can do all that at one time. So your budget is gonna stay the same? This $100,000 for service contracts, is that for outside agency work? Madam Attorney, correct?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, so it's not going to say exactly the same. There have been some proposals line. We had $100 in the service contract. For the record, most of that money has already been used. I'm happy to break down how it was paid out. But the legal services line, there's a reduction by about $54,000, excuse me, $85,000. And then the one that's been proposed or was originally proposed from my office shows a reduction in the service contract line in its entirety. So there's a reduction there. The history of how the office has sort of moved between.
One moment, Ms. Robinson. We just want to annotate for the record that Vice Mayor Bennett has stepped out for one moment. So it'd be in the 8:09, she left the meeting. So we still have a quorum. I just want to make sure that it's on the record. And when she joins back, we'll let everyone know so she can have it on the record.
Okay. So the service contract line was, I think, inserted if I'm looking at the history of how things have been paid out in this office, primarily as a result of us moving money out of the management consulting line. Historically, the management consulting line has been used to pay the city attorney fee when we were outsourcing those particular services. So once that was gone and a salary line
What is that?
funded, then the service contract line was actually funded. And so of the $100,000 that was funded to service contract for FY20,
Hmm.
Ms. Robinson, you muted yourself again. We last heard you say, so out of the 100,000 service contract line, you stopped.
yes, okay, so I think, first of all, I think the mute is going on automatically because I had taken it off and I didn't mute myself again, so I don't know if there is some malfunction. But the service contract line right now has almost been fully utilized. Of the $100,000, $66,862 has been paid to date to Sands Anderson, the firm that formerly performed city attorney's services for the city.
So it did it again. I'm actually not controlling anyone's mute. And this is, everyone should be unmuted or have the ability to mute and unmute themselves. I will ask IT if there might be something with how this is set up that it might cause people to mute automatically or when they pause or something. I'm not sure, but right now, Ms. Robinson, your microphone shows that you're able to speak, and I'll just keep a track on it.
Okay, so I guess where did you lose contact with my voice?
Right, when you said, well, let me go, when you started your sentence over.
Okay, so the service contract line has been taken out for FY21, but for FY20, Councilor Pelham, that budget line has almost been fully utilized. Of the $100,000, $66,682.50 has been paid from it to Sands Anderson. That budget line has also been utilized to pay for my Virginia code set, the ad for my legal assistant when we were posting the position. It has been utilized to pay for my online research program through Westlaw. It has also been utilized to pay for the furniture that is in my office right now. And then there seems to be a prorated fee over several budget lines for shredding and record holding. I've not requested that, but there is a charge to that particular line item in Munis for that particular purpose. And finally, the service contract budget line has been used to pay for my monthly subscription to the Times Dispatch. So it's being utilized in many different ways. And I think primarily because if you look at the other budget categories, they were not funded. And for some of the particular categories, having no funding would just seem antithetical for a law office. So if you look at FY20 budget for the books and subscriptions, there's no money in that line item. So when I came on board last June and I needed books, we had to find money to get books. And so that seemed the service contract line item seemed the most appropriate place, given that it was the one line item that had the most funding. So Going forward, we don't need to utilize that because we're funding those other budget categories in a reasonable way. But you know, the money in many ways is just being shifted out and broken out in other line items.
Okay.
Okay.
And the question, Mr. City Manager, in your budget, you had management consulting. Was that for legal fees?
No, ma'am.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you have a line item for legal fees?
No, ma'am. I have a city attorney.
I know you, that's what I'm saying. And anyone else that has one, should they have one? Because I've seen it somewhere. I just couldn't remember. I thought it was in yours. But
So
if anybody has legal services, I mean, I would like to see that consolidated and then allow the city attorney to decide whether or not if she can't.
Brenda, Mr. Spicer had it Tuesday.
Okay, I mean,
Yeah, and he-
that's a
Yeah.
special service. But if any other department has legal services, those money should be, to me, transferred into her account. And if she find the need to source it out, then she can do that. But any other department, unless it's even if it's a specialized department, a lot of times the attorney will come back to us for a real technical expertise in water or electricity or wastewater mostly, and get someone. But any legal services that throughout this budget, I don't think it needs to be in any department. I don't know if y'all agree, but that's what I would recommend.
So to follow up on your question, Mrs. Pelham, as we discussed last week, social services does have some, and I think that the conversation was that Mr. Spicer and Ms. Robinson had talked about that. I believe the Commissioner of Revenue in her presentation had funding in there for legal services. And I do believe you're correct. We have money in the Hopewell Water Renewal budget. Those are typically used when we have a rate case or need to have some assistance in that manner. It's very specialized to water issues, or for having to, I don't want to use the word fight, but defend our permit levels with DEQ and regulatory agencies. So those are the ones that I can think of off the top of my head that have those. In general, city departments do not have them because, as you're aware, with the charter, the attorney provides me and then ultimately the department's legal assistance with their issues. So we shouldn't have any outside of those handful that we have there. And I would say probably DSS and water renewal are pretty specialized. But I can't remember I have to go back and look at my notes as to the outcome of the discussion with the commissioner, because I think she had some concern that the city attorney wouldn't be providing legal services to the constitutional officers, and that's why she put those funds in her budget.
So with that, Ms. City Attorney, is that the way you want, prefer that to be, that you don't assist the constitutional officers instead of having and put that money in your budget to decide whether or not you can or not?
Well, I think this conversation has taken several, sort of iterations since I've been here. The question was originally asked, was that a responsibility of the city attorney? And I think it has to be, an affirmative communication from the city council to the city attorney. I didn't presume that representation was in place. There are some elements of the commissioner's responsibilities and maybe arguably the treasurer's that are the responsibility of the local attorney. But beyond that, any service delivery to the constitutionals is based on the approval of the local governing board. So I will leave it to council to decide whether that is my responsibility. I've asked it, and I think what I've been doing is bringing the subject up almost on a case-by-case basis, because I've never gotten just a umbrella response. Yes, you will represent the commissioner, yes, you will deliver sort of regular legal services to the constitutionals as their needs may arise. So I'm happy to do the work. I would like to make sure that we have sufficient resources to deliver to the city departments, the city council, and all of the constitutionals. And so if the responsibilities change substantially because of regular service delivery to the constitutionals, we might come back and say, okay, we might need an adjustment to our budget. Right now, I don't see that happening, but I would like to have, instead of the decision coming back to me, a decision from council, and then I can say, okay, council has authorized this, and I don't have to keep wondering whether, you know, this is appropriate to ask for or whatever the case may be. I do want to sort of comment a little bit on the statement about some of the services that are paid for out of water renewals budget. I know that some of the invoices that I've been paying out of my budget to Sands Anderson have involved some work relative to commenting on some water rates. March may have a clearer recollection of those, but if water renewal has that money in its budget, then for future invoice purposes, a lot of the legal services now being paid for out of my office can be picked up by water renewal, at least relative to those particular kinds of issues. As just a general statement, in virtually every position where I've been like the head local government attorney during my tenure, outside council work has been cut down to the barest minimum. In most instances, most of the work that was regularly performed by outside counsel was brought back in-house. And I think that's the case now because, you know, a lot of the things that we've been paying out historically in legal services and to the tune of $139,000 are things that I do on a regular basis and not particularly as a result of some specialized litigation. So I anticipate a great savings, and that is why for that particular budget line item, I reduced the projected amount needed. So, and then the management consulting line, as I said before, while some of that was shifted to the salary line, it's still a savings because it's not a dollar for dollar transfer to the salary line, although it's for the same purpose. There are some small increases, again, I think as a result of building out the office. And I do have a miscellaneous expense line. As you can see, it's $500. And it's there primarily because we are building out the office. And, you know, in this first year, there were a number of things that should have been budgeted for and were not. And we had to kind of scramble to find a line to fund those things out of. And my desire to use the miscellaneous is that, well, if as something comes up as we further build out, now that we've got the paralegal, and just to make the office more efficient and functional, there may be something that we need that doesn't readily fall in an existing budget line. And so it seems appropriate to have some money. I don't think $500 is excessive, but that is the reason it's there, just to make sure that we're not scrambling to figure out where to assign this particular expense.
I have a point of information, Madam Attorney, or that's the right, huh?
I still have the floor, right?
Yeah, you do have the floor, but I do have a point of information.
Okay.
earlier on, you made the remarks about asking for council to provide clarity. I just want for everyone to be on the same page, just for confirmation. The charter says the city attorney shall be the chief legal advisor of the council and the chief administrative officer, period. As designated by council, the city attorney also shall serve as a chief legal advisor to other departments, boards, commissions, and agencies of the city in all matters affecting the interests of the city. The city attorney also shall perform duties, particular duties and functions as assigned by city council. So as the charter states it, you're the legal advisor to council and the city manager only, and council has to give you the directive to support other departments, boards, commissions, and agencies. And that's why you're asking for us to make the decision if we want to give you that particular duty and function as a part of your department, correct?
In large part, yes, ma'am. And different localities handle the constitutionals differently. And I have that personal experience. And so I want to make sure that I'm acting in line with the desires of the local governing body and not simply relying on past experiences.
Thank you. Councilor Pelham, you still have the floor. I just want to get that point of clarity about the actual role of the city attorney.
And with that, again, I just think that we should keep it in-house and transfer those monies, if there have to be any monies, to in that line, so that Ms. Robinson can figure out maybe some kind of way, I guess, estimate how much, but you can't really even do that because you don't have nothing to build on but the $139,000. But if that was stuff that you do, maybe we need to just appropriate some amount that just in case you do have to get an outside person to help you. But any persons that have legal services, those money should be transferred in her account and let her be the decision maker of that for constitutional officers and any, like you read in the charter. So that's my take on it. You might have, we have to vote on that. That would be a motion that I would like to have as a part of the budget process as well.
Okay, we'll add that to the other comments for that closeout work session. Mr. Altman, please capture that in your notes as well. I know that Councilor Randolph had her hand raised and then Councilor Denton, but I also see Ms. Robinson's hand raised. So I don't know if you had something to say or did you accidentally hit your hand?
Yeah, I actually raised my hand because I just wanted to make sure that Councilor Pelham knew, as well as the other members of council, that, you know, really it's more information that I need before I can start delivering the services on a regular basis. My experience in local government is pretty broad, so I don't anticipate a need to refer a lot of things out to outside counsel. I have reserved some monies in the legal services line, but it is not, you know, as much as we have previously funded that particular budget line in the past. So I just need clarity. And once you have clarity, then you can, you know, sort of program your resources in an efficient manner. And, you know, this won't be the first time I worked in a locality where I was required to give legal services to the constitutionals. And so we might have a discussion later on as to how far that extends. Does it, for instance, in one locality, it extended to everything except representation and litigation. And those were very clear guidelines, and it worked for the constitutionals because most of them had the resources of the attorney general to deal with, to represent them in litigation. And so it was a nice balance between utilizing local resources and resources at the state level. So I can do it. I don't anticipate there being a need for a dollar for dollar transfer from one budget line to another. I'm mostly looking for just some clear guidance so we can have probably a more directed conversation as to the types of service delivery and move from there. Thank you.
You're welcome. Councilor Randolph had her hand next.
Thanks. Woo, boy, you attorneys can talk. thank you, Ms. Robinson. I don't think any of us had a problem with your budget. At least I didn't. And as far as the constitutionals, I'm a little confused because we have been over this several times. I know, Ms. Robinson, you alluded to that, but I thought that we had taken an unofficial council poll on this, and that you had the, my dogs are having a good time, sorry, that you had the unofficial okay that we wanted you to do the constitutionals. So my recommendation, because I agree, I would want you to work with the constitutionals. I would like to see that $20,000 come out of the commissioner's budget. And Ms. Robinson has indicated she thinks that she can fully handle this at this time with her existing budget. But that always gives her the latitude to come back to council in case something even more comes up. But at this point in time, give her a space on the upcoming agenda. Maybe put this as an amendment to the agenda under your items for the forthcoming agenda, Ms. Bennett and Ms. Robinson. And we can vote to amend the agenda to take an official vote on this, so it is on the record, and get it over and done with, because we have talked about this back and forth, up and down and sideways. And then once it is official and in the public vote, the constitutional officers be notified that their representation is the city attorney. If anybody has, anything else, we can debate it at the council meeting, or that way we get it over and done with. It doesn't get forgotten again and put on the back burner, and we just go ahead and do it. Thank you.
Councilor Randolph, just for a point of clarity, the last direction council gave was to come back on a case-by-case basis. And that was done recently with the Commissioner of Revenue and with the City Treasurer. And when we asked again, the response was to come back on a case-by-case basis. So I agree with you. If the direction is going to change and we need a vote to make it official, then it should be added to the agenda. But I think, I'm not trying to speak for Ms. Robinson, but I've seen emails and conversation asking for clarity, because the last direction council gave as a body was to come back on a case-by-case basis.
Okay, my recollection is a little different, but that's okay. We both agree that it needs to be maybe put on an amended agenda for Tuesday night so we can make that vote, unless anybody has any big issue with that, and let it move forward. So thank you, done.
Yeah, we can amend the agenda when we get to the meeting. The agenda packet has already been distributed. So council wants to, we can collectively vote to amend the agenda and do a vote, and that will help resolve this for sure.
Yeah,
Ms. Robinson?
Yeah, I think there might have been just a little bit of maybe confusion relative to conversations about continuing the support of the constitutionals for FOIA. That was more certain than the other things, at least in my recollection. And I was clear in our most recent conversation on the FOIA that we wouldn't make any changes unless council actually authorized that through some act of council. So that's my recollection, Councilor Randolph. And so just to be consistent with.
Yep, I'm good with that. We'll move forward some way or another, but thank you.
Yeah.
I see that Councilor Jen has her hand raised, and Councilor Pelham, and then Vice Mayor Bennett. Mr. Altman has a point of information. I think he should ask it because I'm not tracking all the way.
So there was a question or the comment about transferring legal services from other departments. And I kind of got maybe a little bit lost, and Ms. Robinson can correct me if I'm wrong from her perspective. The legal services line item wouldn't be utilized to provide assistance to the constitutional officers or to a city department. And my thought and how we've used it in the past is it's always been outside counsel that was brought in to assist with the case, or if she may need an expert witness or someone to assist with the case. So I just want to kind of make sure we're all kind of on the same plane here when we're talking about that, and I'll defer to Ms. Robinson if I'm incorrect.
I don't think I understand your question. Could you just repeat it for me?
Well, I think the clarity would be the legal services line item would be when you're bringing in an outside counsel to assist or an expert witness to assist with a case, versus if Ms. Griffin in the Department of Development were to come down and ask for advice on an ordinance amendment. That would be typically within your scope of services from your salary, not outside counsel work.
That's correct. That's correct. But if I think how I was understanding that conversation is that if we bring in the services that are required by the constitutionals to the office, that might have an impact on that particular line. Because, you know, while I can say at this moment that there shouldn't be a substantial change in my need for the legal services budgeted, in the future, once that work starts to be done, that might actually change. That might change immediately, depending on if council says is a part of its vote on Tuesday that the legal services would include representation and litigation. That would be a substantial demand on the resources of our office as it currently is staffed, simply because litigation takes a lot of time and in most instances requires some additional manpower for everything to be maintained in a timely fashion. So some of this is going to depend on how far council wants those services to go. I will again put a point back to what I thought was a nice balance, which is sort of the day-to-day legal support, legal advice, but not litigation representation. Because they can look to the AG's office in Virginia Risk for assistance. But if you go, you know, the full Monty on it, then yes, I will probably in very short term come back and ask for additional funding, either at the legal services line or for staffing to be brought on as a full-time employee or a part-time employee. So just keep that in mind as you're thinking about your vote, how far you want it to go.
Hey, Mr. Altman, does that answer the point of information you were trying to get for Councilor Pelham, I think?
I think so. I think so, but I would defer to Ms. Pelham.
Councilor Pelham? Does that answer the point of information that he was trying to provide clarity for you?
I don't know. I just think that even if a department needs an expert witness, it still should go through the city attorney. So no department should have any legal services money allocated to them. That's just my point.
Okay. All right. So that was the point of information that was addressed. Councilor Denton is next to have the floor, then Vice Mayor Bennett.
Okay, can you hear me okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, I know, Ms. Robinson, we've been talking when we talked with the directors of all the other departments on how we can cut travel. I see you have some budgeted. Is this a requirement that you would have to do this, or do you, because of COVID, some of this was done on a webinar, or do you feel that this is a justifiable budget item, since we are looking at this on every level?
Right. So on the travel line that I submitted, I deleted the travel public transportation line altogether. So the budget was originally 1,600. My budget request for FY was 0. I don't think it shows that way on the budget that you have before you. Where I did make increases was for lodging, convention and conferences, and meals. And certainly all of those things can change now that we are post-COVID, because these numbers were submitted prior to the COVID pandemic. For the conferences and the conventions, that line item would be used to pay for webinars, which still have some costs associated with it. I increased that budget primarily because it would now, with a new person coming on board, fund 2 people as opposed to 1. And I wasn't quite sure what level of education that our incoming paralegal would require or believe for herself to be desirable for some reasonable professional development. As far as the attorneys are concerned, a great number of our courses are now available through something other than live education. However, unless the Virginia State Bar changes its annual requirements, there are still a certain number of hours that we have to lodge every year with live education. So there will be some need to travel. But again, I've always utilized those line items to fund those particular things. And if we keep it local, if my attendance is kept to be local, meaning to deal with just those seminars that are offered in the Richmond area or Williamsburg, I can probably fund whatever I need from the mileage line item, as opposed to that travel public transportation line item. So, you know, there's movement there, but as I said, I think what you have before you, I read it to see that I had some money in that particular line item. And in fact, I took it down to 0 in the Excel spreadsheet that I submitted.
Okay, thank you very much.
Ms. Robinson, just to clarify, there is 0 in that line item in the proposed budget. There's 1,600 in the current year, but there's 0 in the proposed budget.
Okay, so I was just thinking her question was grounded in something, since she asked about, talking about the travel line item. So I just thought there was when I first looked at it, I really saw it as not being changed, and I had to look at it several other times to just see that it was actually zeroed out.
Okay. Counselor Dennis, does this complete your question
Yes.
for now? Okay. Vice Mayor Bennett? And also, for the record, do you know what time you joined? When I saw your hand raised, it was 8:35.
I was here prior to Counselor Randolph speaking.
She was on at 8:20.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Brown. All right, Vice Mayor Bennett?
So, Counselor Randolph, what you were asking is for this item to be placed on the agenda for a vote. And so this is how I understand the conversation, and correct me if I'm wrong. At first, council decided it was for the city attorney to do a case-by-case basis for the constitutional officers. Now we are going to request that the city attorney represent the constitutional officers. So it concerns me because only the city attorney would know her workload. So are we going to transfer all of those legal fees under the city attorney? That way, if she can, and that way she will be able to determine what she has to defer out for services in case, and she actually does the triage as far as if she's going to take the case or if something, else, if it deserves another specialty service. I mean, how are we actually going to do that? I can't just say,
May I
answer? Constitutional officers, and she doesn't even know what the plan is. I just want a plan, because we can't just say, this is what you're gonna do now, but we just have to, I think we just have to talk about it, you know?
And that's fine. I mean, we don't have to have it on the agenda. It got a little more convoluted. My thought was that under the city attorney's section of the agenda, she could propose a motion for council to review and possibly look at. I wasn't indicating that all departments would come to her, as the city attorney indicated, and so did the city manager. Some departments we know are going to need specialized attorneys, and they are going to keep their attorney line item. But for the commissioner of revenue, $20,000 was put into her budget, in my understanding, simply because she didn't know whether our city attorney was going to be able to handle any of her cases. And Mrs. Robinson, you'll have to say if I'm jumping to conclusions, but my understanding from you was that you thought at this point in time that most general needs for the constitutionals that are not specialized, like wastewater and social services in their regards, you could handle, but that if the specialty needed something extra and you hadn't foreseen or budgeted for that, you would need to come back to us at that particular time. And that's what I was anticipating us being able to vote on, was that simply she was that the city attorney would take on the general needs for the attorney, for an attorney in our constitutional offices, when and if it was not a specialized field, which I thought had identified or clarified, and then go from there on a case by case if there was more need or something went to a very specialized aspect in a particular case under one of the general constitutional officer's needs.
Okay, so here's the thing, the case by case, to me, that's pretty much covers it, because it's all general, right? It's case by case, and she can determine whether or not she can take the case or it needs to be deferred out. I don't know, I don't understand why we have to do another vote for it, but if that's what all of council wants, if you guys can just send a write-up on a CAF and let me or Kamisha know what it is that you exactly want to vote on, so we can put it on the agenda.
Yeah, I was just wanting to make sure that you knew that, you know, when I said, Councilor Bennett, that we might amend the agenda, and that could be a possibility. I just suggested, and what I heard the city attorney say was that there was a need for council to make a decision, so we could let the constitutionals know of that decision, because as it stands right now, maybe not. They don't understand, because the commissioner kind of indicated she wasn't sure whether she was to use the city attorney. Now, I could be wrong, and maybe we're doing this too quickly, but that was just my thought. I'm okay with whatever the majority of council wants to do.
So just for a point of clarity, we'll have to do a round robin to see who wants to amend the agenda after it's been made public, or do the regular amendment, which is at the meeting, and we do a voice to see that's the approach we want to take. But again, I think Ms. Robinson needs time to prepare some options for us, and she's already stated several times that that one option was to help with some of the work, but to not do the representation in court or litigation. I think that maybe we put this on a regular meeting agenda and have time for this to be fleshed out and discussed. And so we're not just rushing to make a decision, because she's been here since June, and another 2 weeks is not going to hurt anybody. And it'll be before the next fiscal year. And so there's different options that we can talk about, but in the midst of that, again, I think that we're mixing up two different topics, and Ms. Robinson does have her hand raised. One topic we discussed was FOIA. The one topic we discussed was actual support and legal. So we have to ultimately decide for both of those items, because that is what's getting mixed up when people are talking about what we discussed in the past. I keep hearing stuff being mixed over than what was discuss on both of those fronts. And I think that might be helpful if we clarify both of those items. And Ms. Robinson, you did have your hand raised. Maybe you can provide more insight or share when you think this is reasonable as for us to give you time, because we do have another item that was put on her today at the last minute for Tuesday's meeting. And that's a little bit more urgent because it deals with making sure we waive the fees and penalties for residents during this time. So perhaps it might be best to wait until the next regular meeting agenda where there's adequate time to prepare this.
It's given out to everybody? I'm sorry,
Huh?
I missed it. Was that a topic that was given out to everybody to know on council?
What I just talked about?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, at the last meeting that council had, you made one of the motions actually about, remember we had the long discussion about the penalties and fees? Both motions were to come back. Well, one has specifically to come back on June 9th, and the other one, it was implied that we would have those documents to look over and for council to vote and approve those for residents and businesses. And
I just missed it today. That's okay.
huh?
I just missed whatever we did today. Sorry.
Oh, yeah, I noticed it this evening when a constituent had reached out to me with some concerns. Then I reached out to the clerk's office to see if it was on the agenda because I know we didn't take official action on it and it was on the agenda. So then I reached out to Ms. Robinson and council at the same time, and the city manager, everybody's in the same email thread to get clarity. And she wasn't made aware that, she's supposed to work on this project. And so she's working to try to get something to us for Tuesday. So I don't know if Ms. Robinson can address that as well, but that's one looming project that she got today to follow up on because it wasn't relayed back to her. So I don't know what time constraints, if the other topic we're talking about tonight would be feasible, or if we can just go ahead and plan for the next regular meeting, since we all know we're going to be trying to find a resolution on this.
I'm okay with postponing it then.
Okay, to the next, not this one, but the next one after that, and just know we're going to have it in the agenda.
Yes.
Okay, perfect.
And I'll put it on the agenda or work with Ms. Robinson to get it put on the agenda if I need to. Or work with Counselor Bennett to get it put on. Either way.
Ms. Robinson, can you just plan to put that on the next, the following, not this one, but the upcoming one, and council knows that we're agreeing to make sure you put it under your section of the agenda if you can plan for that?
Okay, so but I need some clarity. Are you asking for me to prepare a motion or to have some alternatives to propose for options for you to choose from?
Options.
What you're expecting, okay.
Options, and then council can have a substantive discussion on the options, and then someone can make a motion as to which one they prefer, and we see what carries.
Yes, ma'am.
Is everyone okay with that? And I'll be under the city attorney section on the agenda.
Yes.
For the fourth meeting, you know what I'm trying to say, the second meeting that we have this month. Is anyone opposed to that?
I have to speak. I have to speak here. I'm sorry.
Mm-hmm.
We're asking, let me be clear. You're asking the attorney to bring us what kind of options for what?
Okay, so to be clear, due to the conversation we've had tonight, I'm asking the city attorney, not on this upcoming Tuesday, because that's already done. We already have another project that's more pressing. For the meeting that we have on the 23rd, which should be our second meeting of the month, for her to prepare options on legal support for the constitutional officers. And those options to include addressing FOIA and or addressing legal services in general. Let her prepare some options for council to discuss and talk about, and council can make the recommendation as to which one we want to move forward. So I'm not asking for a specific one or the one that Councilor Randolph addressed, just that allow the city attorney to give us different options for us to talk about. And perhaps the one that was mentioned tonight might be on the table as well, because it was discussed for quite a bit of time. So, is that clear?
And the other thing is, I mean, have we asked the city attorney if the 23rd will be enough time? Because I
just asked her right now if she was fine with that just now.
Well, can I ask her, or can you ask her again so I can hear it?
Ms. Robinson.
Yes, ma'am. Yeah, Madam Vice Mayor, thank you very much for your consideration. There aren't very many options. I can quickly go through them. and provide where I think the option will have a greater impact on the budget and the resources of the city attorney's office as it's currently staffed.
And the reason why I didn't ask for, I was trying to get support to not do it on this upcoming Tuesday is because she already has another major project that she has to try to get to us on short notice. So that's why I asked her to make sure it was fine to do the next meeting after this one. Does anyone else have any questions or need clarity? Is everyone in a consensus that it'll be on the second meeting, which is the 23rd, I believe, under the city attorney section, and Ms. Robinson will be preparing options for council to discuss? Okay, there are no objections. So I guess that's the plan for that. Thank you, Councilor Randolph, for pushing the issue to make sure we find a resolution. Thank you, Ms. Robinson, for addressing all those questions. Councilor Pelham has her hand raised for the rest of the discussion on your budget.
So we'll decide on whether or not the money is gonna stay in her budget after we make that decision on the meeting after next, correct? With the city attorney.
I would imagine so, and I'll defer to Ms. Robinson. The only reason why I say that is because depending on the option that council selects would dictate the funding. As she kind of stated earlier, depending on how in depth we go with her support, it will drive if there is a need for additional staffing or costs to be put into her budget. But Ms. Robinson, please.
No, that's sufficient. Please don't respond. Let's move on. We'll talk about it when we vote, okay? Thank you.
Okay, that's okay. Is any, you raise your hand again.
I did. Lower hand. Oh, lower hand. Okay.
Does anyone else have any other questions? I do have one question. I hate to belabor this point, just to make sure I understood you correctly, Ms. Robinson, and I'm not trying to go back to the point Ms. Pelham was making, Councilor Pelham was making. When you mentioned the legal fees that was coming out of your account for wastewater, were you saying that some of their legal fees were being deducted from your account? And is that what you were saying earlier, and as opposed to their legal fee account?
Yes, yeah, I think so. I know I've approved some invoices for outside counsel to be paid for work before the SCC relative to, I believe, the water rates. And so if water renewal has legal services in its budget, then at least going forward, those types of services need to be paid out of water renewal as opposed to my budget.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions, Mr. Altman?
Just to clarify that, that was the water company's water rates when they had a rate case, not the rates for water renewal. That was Virginia American Water.
So when these happen, is she being consulted or just going against her account?
Some of these charges, Madam Mayor, are resulting from the decision that was made between outgoing counsel and myself at the beginning of my tenure as to those matters that he would continue because of where they were in, sort of time and space, and those things that made sense to come back to me to be handled in-house because of this sort of, it was easy for the matter to be transferred. That water rate matter at the time seemed appropriate for him to stay involved in it simply because of the complexity of the issue as described. However, I would say that based on what I understood was going to be all the activity on that particular matter, it has extended for a far greater period of time than I thought would be the case for what we were attempting to achieve. But I only commented on it because of the city manager's comment that water renewal had a line item in its budget relative to specialized legal services. And I didn't recall that the water issue was related to Virginia American Water as opposed to water renewal. And so that was the point of my comments. But if it's, you know, I guess we can deal with, you know, how we pay for Virginia American Water issues going forward. But I'm not quite sure if the thing that's coming out of my budget, what should naturally fall within the city budget, the city attorney's budget, as opposed to something else. But it's not a big deal at this point.
Can we find a way to circle back to this at a later meeting or closed session discussion when we talk about legal, you do your legal report to us?
Well, we can talk about it. I'm not really sure if closed session would be the appropriate one based
Okay,
on sort of the contours of the discussion, at least as they exist right now. But again, the context was, I had the wrong context. I thought it was something for water renewal, and it is not. So,
okay.
you know, it just, that kind of takes care of most of my argument, I think.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions? All right, so we are going to go to the office on, we're gonna do city council or office on youth, but we have guests here. So I think, oh yeah, office on youth is next. That is on the screen. I know that we had an issue with the chair joining us as an attendee. So we need to get her into the line, but Mr. Napper is here as a youth coordinator to discuss the Office on Youth budget.
Madam Mayor, the office chair is present in law as of.
Mr. Napper, your phone is echoing.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, it's still echoey. You can try a little bit, but
Madam Mayor, Ms. Mitchell, can you hear me?
yep, you're clear.
Okay. All right, so I'll get started. Mr. Napper is also here, but let me get started. Good evening, Madam Mayor and Madam Vice Mayor, members of Hopewell City Council, Mr. Altman. It is with great pleasure that I, as the chair, am able to meet with you tonight, along with Mr. Napper, who's our youth coordinator for the city and for the Office on Youth. We thank you for your time needed on tonight to discuss our current fiscal year budget and answer any questions as needed. Now more than ever, the quality of programs and alternatives to incongruent behavior by the youth that we service is needed now more than ever. During these times, we have taken on the role of a liaison to assist the youth and even families to navigate through these uncertain times in this community. Before we begin, I would like to say that I know the bulk of the budget work session tonight for the Office on Youth will largely be comprised of service contracts, youth programs, miscellaneous, and essential spending. I would like to clarify and let the council know that we as a commission have not funded the miscellaneous line item and have tried to place the funding in the correct line item as to bring greater transparency as we serve each ward in the city of Hopewell. Pending any questions you may have for me at this time.
Thank you very much, Ms. Mitchell. Does anyone have any questions regarding the Office on Youth budget? Councilor Randolph has her hand raised, and then Councilor Pelham.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. I'm gonna have an issue with this budget as a whole, simply because several months ago, I brought several concerns to council in closed session. They were never rectified to my knowledge or my feeling that we were doing what was right for the citizens. So we can add this to the issues for me because I cannot vote on this budget as is. Thank you.
Share.
You're welcome. Counselor Pelham?
What, I mean, what is, if you can't vote on it, but you can't, something that you want to change, or? I don't understand what,
Ma'am, there'll be
Yeah.
some things that I think we need to discuss to change.
well, I think that's what we're doing, right?
Yeah, at our issues meeting, that's what we're gonna do.
The people that manage the buttons that are here, once you address it to them, we're
I'm
not.
not here to argue about what I think. I'm just telling you where I'm coming from, and that's it. Sorry.
The one statement I would like the council to consider is just because of COVID and other things, there's several items in the budget that were not expended out to the max. And for those items, I'm recommending that we do just like we do for the fire department, put that in a different line item so that we can start some type of campaign so that we can raise money to get Melanie Gym up to par to be a service building for our youth. Those are the citizens that we serve. And that's the reason for this budget for those citizens that an 18 or 21 or whatever the age is we serve. So that would be a later consideration to, I guess, to vote on, so that the money just won't go back into the general fund, but be appropriated for the ultimate improvements in that building. We keep starting and stopping, but we never finish. And the young people, of course, just like myself, you want to get away from Hopewell after you go through so much stuff in Hopewell. And a lot of the sentiment is the same today, but if we can give kids a more viable and involved opportunities, other recreation is wonderful. They do a great job, but they need the culture and the arts as well and other type programming. So this office supplants that, and that would be my stand to service those young people who can't vote now, but they will be 18 soon. So our future voters, so that they can stick around and service their families in Hopewell in the later years. But I think the budget is fine, and it was up to me, I would increase the dollars in the programming field. But if we don't, we can't spend it probably because of COVID. So those monies could go, like I said, be transferred into a campaign budget to rebuild Melanie into a viable place for them. That is it right now. Thank you.
You're welcome, Vice Mayor Bennett.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Jim, where is that located?
Melanie Gym is right beside the school board. I'm sorry.
Right across from Myrna Field.
If I do any, if I have to suggest anything about any gym improvements, it would have to be the recreation center. And that's because the youth uses the recreation center. Not only that, also the families do. So I won't support that at this time to do anything for the Melanie Gym, because right now we do have a recreation center that is very well, it have good bones. We have children that use it. We have families that go there. We have a swim team. We have a lot of things going on there, skate park, and it's already established. I would rather put that money there and have Office on Youth either work with Recreation Parks and figure something out. But I'm not just for the youth. If you're saying that Office on Youth, but you have to also include their families, because that's another part of youth. If you're not including their parents, their families, then how can you better the community? So right now, as it stands, I do not suggest putting any of that line item money into going to Melanie Gym.
Okay, thank you. There are no other hands raised at this time. One second before I go do this next round. Counselor Denton and Counselor Holloway, you're joining us via phone. Do you have anything?
I'm not by phone.
Oh, I thought you was by phone. I'm sorry. Do you have anything? Okay, you don't have your hand raised. Okay. Dr. Manker, Council Parton just messaged that he's trying to get into the software. Can you please work with him offline to try to get into the meeting, please? There are no hands raised at this moment. So Councilor Denton, go ahead, then I'll go after you.
You said my hand was raised, so I was trying to put it down, but.
Oh, I said your hand. I said you can raise your hand. I'm sorry. I said it so quickly.
I don't have anything.
Yeah, I didn't know if you had something to say. And I said, I thought you was by phone. You said, no, I'm not. I said, oh, that's right. You can raise your hand. I forgot. I'm sorry. I just want to ask the office on you a few questions, but just for the public that's watching this, and this kind of gives a little bit of historical knowledge, kind of to probably what Councilor Pelham is pointing to. I think I would say 2014, I think it is. I'll go back and get the exact date. The former city council thought it was important to invest in families and youth in Hopewell. And so we added to our strategic plan to create a family and youth resource center. And the goal was to renovate Maloney Gym in order to house the Office on Youth. Maloney Gym is just the title of it. It actually has 8 classrooms inside, as well as a gym and then a track that goes on top. I think it's a Boys and Girls Club used to run out of there at the bottom, and then they also had the out of school suspension that was in that building prior to a couple years ago. So council used the school building committee, which is comprised of school board members and city council, to meet to discuss what are some terms for council to be able to obtain access to that building in order to begin the renovations. Was Mayor Shornack and I served on that board, along with Mr. Cuffey, the superintendent, and I cannot remember who the other individual was at this time, but it's just drawing a blank right now. We got all the way through the whole process of negotiating terms when the council switched over. So where we switched over in election cycles, we did tours of the building. We mapped out terms for leasing it. We mapped out terms of utilities. The only thing that was kind of what we were waiting on was the quotes from Public Works, our Public Works, in regards to the major costs. Council in our budget cycle, that was the year, actually 2016 is when we said that we was going to invest in certain community things. And if you look at the newspaper, I think they called it council's wish list. We said that we was gonna put something in everybody's ward, but then also look at citywide projects. That's when we said we was gonna address paving in City Point, because we had that City Point project from VCU that council had endorsed. We said lighting in Ward 2. We said that we was going to increase money to pave roads by a couple $100,000. And then we also said that we was going to put $250,000 toward the initial renovation of Maloney. And the reason why that money was allocated was because we said that we would try to do just the first floor. The first floor is where the gym is, and some classrooms, and as well as the bathrooms. And then we would use the community to do a campaign to try to do the upstairs, because the building is sturdy and in good shape. And in that process, we needed to just work on the initial, which were making sure the hot water was back on in the bathrooms, addressing the windows, and then the AC unit. Those are the 3 major items that were non-cosmetic. And so, we left off on waiting for the quotes, hold off on getting the quotes. And that's when Mr. Altman was just joining city council, and we were trying to figure out how much that would cost. But since the CAFR started being late that year, the money that we had planned to put inside the renovation, council, it was taken from us because we had to work on the audits. And then there was other costs that came up, and that money, as well as the roads money and everything that we had planned for, council was unable to do. As a result, we do not have a location for the Office on Youth to provide programs in the city. And so I support Councilor Pelham in regards to finding space. And one of the requests I have for this budget cycle, and I talked to Mr. Dane about it previously, is to see if council can support helping the Office on Youth find the space to lease that actually provides space to do programs. Right now, we have to partner with outside agencies and groups to be able to offer events and services. So that's just the background for the public to understand why Maloney Gym is referenced, because that was what the former council supported doing to create a family resource center. Madam Chair, can you address some of the concerns I've seen online in regards to the Office on Youth supporting outside entities this year?
Absolutely. When it comes to the Office on Youth supporting outside entities, we did give donations to organizations that we believe in, that we saw that were doing the work. Unfortunately, without us having a physical location, we were not able to do as many programs as we would like to. We are grateful for the partnership that we have with Hopewell City Public School System. And that's where we have been able to do our programming at. But there were organizations that we saw that were doing great works in the city that we did give donations to. So that's what I believe the concern was with some people in the community. And I believe it was because they didn't hear it directly from us.
Thank you. And it's 9:15 and Council Parton just messaged that he entered the meeting, so great. Can you also address service contracts? And then Mr. Napper, can you address the youth programs that are planned for this upcoming year for the $50,000?
I can defer the actual service contracts to Mr. Napper because that's part of our day-to-day operation. And I can talk about programs or however you would like for it to go.
Okay, that's fine. I don't know what happened just now. I don't know if you guys are beside each other, but the echo is happening. So however way you were set up before, can you continue with that way? Because there was no echo. And if that's how you defer you to let him answer service contracts and you do the programs that.
Good afternoon. 1 second, please. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Good afternoon. I just want to take a quick opportunity to discuss service contracts as instructed. We're always continuing to partner with different organizations, but as it pertains to service contracts specifically, I was brought on board in January to address line items within the budget that could be better used to change the narrative, to improve public trust as it pertains to appropriation of funds, to make them be used in a manner in which is conducive for all wards and all personnel. I've done my best to accomplish that in the time period during this period of crisis for the community. Future items we're trying to do is we're going to bring in specific people. There is a strategic work plan that we have in place, not in place, but there's a strategic work plan that we're trying to put in place as soon as we can get the commission to bless off on it. But we're going to be doing things that will be inclusive to others that I do not believe that the other systems that were mentioned can do, such as we want to bring in persons that's going to assist us with Power School. We want to bring in subject matter experts. We've already been in talks with the superintendent of schools to be able to bring a greater understanding of how to help parents better help their children that are going to continue their education. Speaking directly with a parent that has come into our office, he did not understand the emailing of Google Docs. So we had to assist him to be able to just be able to go into his own email to give him the information so he can better assist their child. So we said, you know what? Families are a part of our community. We need to better the parent to be able to better the child. So we want to give them education, training, and certification as needed, because I believe it gets missed in several occasions that the Office on Youth services ages between birth 0 to 24. There are some 24-year-olds in the city that we service that are parents at the age or by the age of 24. We continue to service those persons all the way up until age of 24, and then many of them return as youth advisory persons or actual volunteers that help assist us with our programs. We want to bring tax education back into the city of Hopewell at a younger age. We are consistent in our minds and our thought process when it pertains to early childhood development. We want to make sure that we have a stake in that, a part in that. And for those, and during this time period, we have plans in place that are going to assist the community with the distance learning. All of this encompasses service contracts. We have to bring in outsourcing, outside sources to be able to provide these specific services. I recently, well, over the last few months, I visited the, I believe it was the Surrey County Office on Youth. I believe they call it Office on Youth Family Service Building, or however they word it. But in order for the Office on Youth to look like what members of City Council may seem that it needs to look like, there has to be additional funds placed in those line items to be able to bring on staffers that can do the work. It is simply not possible to do some of the things that is being expected of the Office on Youth at this time in the way in which its makeup is made. That is just an honest, I won't say opine, I believe it's an honest assessment on my part that the way the Office on Youth would need to look in order to better service all of the wards in the community. We need to better protect the purse of the community by bringing in subject matter experts that then do special projects that can take care of our community. We're continuing on a day-to-day during this time period of COVID-19, well, post-COVID-19, I should say. We've been helping persons come in seeking employment. We've had persons come in, be able to bring them in and say, what services that you have out there? What labor teams do you have out there? What can we do to be liaisons for this community to provide our youth job opportunities during this time period? We want to make sure that the Office on Youth narrative is that we are a partner of the community, and we need each and every citizen of the city of Hopewell to buy in to that. We are trying our best since I've been hired to change the narrative, change the belief of what the Office on Youth was prior to the voting of the new chairperson. And all we're asking is to be given an opportunity to put these things, put these processes in place. So as it pertains to service contracts, we do have plans to use those service contract dollars in our future budget and as we move forward. But as of this time, due to restrictions to pre-COVID-19 and the way the commission was set up, things were stringent, things were not in a place, and we recognize that. And then those measures have been put in place to correct them. So I openly invite anyone or any council member, any member of the community to, if they have questions, if they have concerns, please contact this office directly. Contact myself. I have a 24-hour number, and I have a office number that we monitor to be able to just bring clarity of information and give the understanding of what the Office on Youth really stands for. I believe that it is the narrative out there that is just a basketball program. And that would just mean that the other 40 programs, 45 programs that are under the Office on Youth right now are just being ignored in a manner in which they're not being heard. So we want to change that narrative, improve the manner in which those other programs are delivered and seen by the community, so we can understand that everyone does not have the opportunity to pay to be in some of those community centers that we have now. The Office on Youth provides free programming to all 7 wards. It's not any ward specifically, but if I can just make one honest opinion, and then I will defer back to the chair. We cannot help the dynamic of the community in which we service. The number one thing is our community is made up of different populations, different ethnicities, different demographics, and we want to service all of them. We do not want to just try to service one particular area. We want to provide gaps. We want to be the filler for those gaps that are not being serviced. We want to ensure that every ward knows that we are here for them. And I will defer back to the chair at this time, pending any questions about service contracts. Thank you.
Mr. Napper, before we do that, I made a mistake last time about our time check because we started at 5:30. Now we start at 6:30, and we'll end our meeting in 5 minutes unless council wants to continue to finish this presentation to address the youth programs.
Yes, ma'am.
I would like to make permission to make that motion to give us 30 more minutes.
I'll second that. It is up, motions made to extend the meeting 30 minutes by Councilor Pelham, seconded by Mayor Gore. It is up for discussion. I see no hands. Those joining us by phone. Okay, roll call, please, Madam Clerk.
Counselor Randolph,
No.
Counselor Holloway,
Yes.
Counselor Parton,
No.
Mayor Gore,
Yes.
Counselor Denton,
No.
Counselor Pelham,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Bennett.
Yes. Motion passes. Madam Clerk, by your tally, the motion passed.
Yes, ma'am, 4-3.
Thank you so much. We just ended with Mr. Napper asking if there's any questions regarding service contracts.
My hand's raised.
Okay, go ahead. It's not raised, but go ahead.
No. Oh, I thought it was
It's okay, go ahead.
me. You talking to Ms. Pelham?
Yes, go ahead.
I'm sorry. Yeah, but again, I just want to reiterate to the council that I understand your sentiments about Vice Mayor about the recreation center, but the problem with that is that they never have space for the many programs that the Office on Youth schedule, because they have their own programs that center around the physical aspect of a child and the family, when the cultural and other things that the Office on Youth cover, and the space is just not enough space, more so than the Maloney Gym has. Like she mentioned, it does have the classroom capacity to do a lot of things. It used to be a computer room that the school had donated computers for them too, for parents and children to learn about, to gain computer skills, for example. But it's the two programs, recreation and Office on Youth, not in competition. Some things they can do together, but the Office on Youth just cannot embed itself into that rec center because of the capacity and the programs that Mr. Reed Miller already run. So I don't think that would be possible, but I didn't know it was that many. The 45 programs that they have mentioned is something that we need to sustain, and parents can come and the children as well, but that is a sustain. I would like to sustain that program for real, because if we don't change families, we'll be starting, we won't be going anywhere. So that's all I have for right now.
Okay, so those joining by phone, anything regarding service contracts? Okay, I'll just make one point of clarification that I saw from earlier comments again online. There was a service contractor hired I think it was maybe over a year now. And that person was brought on specifically to address two projects. One was court services and the other was CSA. And for the public that's listening or watching, court services gets biannual grant funding on behalf of the city of Hopewell. And it's through the VJCCA Act. And that money historically was used to support offices on youth until the state did away with them around 2000. Our money gets given to the court services unit for the city of Hopewell, and that works with juvenile delinquency specifically. And the ask was to look at how those programs were being administered and to see if the delinquency rate was staying steady or declining, and if there should be more involvement on the city's end to ensure how our funding was being dispersed. And that's one of the reasons why I asked Mr. Altman to add court services for a budget discussion, because council has never really talked about court services or how our money that's given to the city is being managed and the programs that's being offered. And those clearly help directly impact youth because they're juvenile delinquency funding. That's the whole purpose of it. The other part was this, the contract was to look at CSA. By now we've heard about the fraud incident that occurred in Hopewell. We have to pay back $1 million to, I think it's the state. And so each year we have to put aside $90,000 or $100,000 to repay that money. One of the things that came from the state special audit on Hopewell was talk about there was no policies in place and there is no checks and balances or some of the things that would prevented fraud. But another item that was mentioned was the use of unmandated funds. Those funds can be used to support youth services and programs for children. And so the contractor that was hired actually worked for Hopewell in social services and then also was a director of social services in another locality. So he clearly has the expertise to be able to do these types of assessments and also has an expertise in foster care. So the person was brought on board to see what Hopewell was doing with our unmandated funding, and then there was a partnership that we could build with social services, because at the time that money was also being proposed to be reduced, which meant Hopewell would have lost state funding for youth services in regards to unmandated funds from social services and CSA. The last point I'll make in terms of services, in terms of what was mentioned about workforce programs, we owe federal money for workforce programs for disabled, displaced adults, displaced youth, and veterans. Their qualifications for youth funding for localities is through age 24. So that is why when council created the Office on Youth, we had their age range go up that high so that we could utilize that federal funding in Hopewell. And as you guys know, we've got a work with Mr. Dane and Mr. Altman and to bring $300,000 to City of Hopewell for workforce programs last year. And that entire workforce program where we had city councils intern last year, that program was using that WIOLA funding, and also it was for at-risk youth and displaced young adults. So in order to qualify, you had to have either a criminal background, pregnancy, educational attainment issues, literacy issues, the things that cripple people from being able to move up social and economically within their community. And so that is why that was created to help fill in those gaps. So just for the public's knowledge, we are looking at, with the city right before COVID-19, Mr. Dane was following up on how we can use the rest of our $300,000 for that program. I don't know if Mr. Dane is still on the line because he is a liaison for the Office on Youth. Mr. Dane, are you there? Can you give us, I know COVID-19 pretty much stopped that conversation, but can you kind of answer that question in regards to where we was talking about with bringing back that workforce program for youth in Hopewell?
To be frank, I haven't been able to get any answers out of the representatives from the state who we were dealing with. I and Jennifer both have left several messages with them trying to figure out what we could do, what next steps are, and we can't get an answer. So I'm not very hopeful, but we'll continue to pursue it.
Okay, and if it's helpful, I can reach back out to them as well. I got a response back from one of the representatives, so I'll piggyback with you on an email. But before that, we were talking with the Office on Youth and the other departments about bringing that back for a year-round opportunity, correct?
Yes, if we had the funding, but I'm not sure the funding's there.
probably not now because of COVID-19, the state having to cut resources. But the point I'm trying to make is we were looking at trying to continue workforce program. So now for Madam Chair to answer the questions regarding the youth programs. I think you said you were going to pivot back to you instead of Mr. Napper to address those.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you for that. In regards to the programming that we have, that we plan on in the future, it is a multitude of programs. And again, I was so thankful that Ms. Pelham said it. Office on Youth and Parks and Recreation have for some reason been pitted against each other. Like one is doing, like we're doing the same things. We're on two totally different spectrums when it comes to our programming. And I'm hopeful that with the listing that we have sent over to City Council, that y'all will be able to see what it is that we're doing. Most of the programs that we have, I'm looking at the paper that we sent y'all, it's about 34 programs. 14 of them we have voted on and decided to make them virtual programs. We have Chopping It Up with Chef, which is a culinary experience for the youth that is free of charge, that is exposing them to the culinary world before they get to the high school and really know what they want to do with their lives. We are trying to make sure that we have programming for our younger youth so that they can start deciding on what it is that they want to be when they become older, which are some of the things that I remember from Hopewell. I was a youth that took part in different programs out here to help me determine what it was that I wanted to be when I grew up, like the Medical Explorers program through John Randolph Hospital. So there are different opportunities that we have on our listing of programs that we would love to have the support of City Council when it comes to us doing that. Balling After Dark, we do have that program. For most people, they see the word balling and they are under the impression that it is nothing more than a basketball event, which it is not. There is a lot of mentoring that is happening there. There is a lot of discussions that are being had with the young people to help them determine whether it is in their best interest to do what's right or what's popular. We have great community leaders who are a part of that initiative, who come in and actually have committed to every third Saturday of the month, spending 5 hours with the youth of Hopewell. And we are grateful for them and that opportunity. It is also an opportunity for us to partner with local Hopewell restaurants so that they can provide students with a taste of Hopewell. And us also be able to build that partnership. We have our student advisory for the Youth Services Commission. And these young people are the game changers that this city and this world needs. And we are excited about the opportunity to help them learn how to use their voice for not only themselves, but their communities and others. We are hopeful that most people are finally being able to see that we are trying to support the community and make this a community where the youth thrive. With the Office on Youth, I've been excited about the different opportunities that we have been able to give not only the youth of Hopewell, but also their families, the opportunity to let us know exactly what it is that they want. They are able to speak to the policymakers in the city when we've had community forums and be able to build those partnerships, whether it be with the government of the city of Hopewell or the school systems. So we have been able to, like Mr. Napper has said on multiple occasions, fill in the gap and be the liaison between all different parties. We have a partnership with Can Do, which is through District 19, where that is a program that is helping us to get the word out and stress to students that drugs are not what they need to partake in at this time. We're excited about that partnership. We're excited about our initiatives with the Early Childhood Development Program, and we are working diligently with that. Our partnership with Crater Workforce has us to the point where we are going to be able to do a job readiness program for our teenagers to get them ready for the workforce. And that is resume building. That is our partnership with Dress for Success out of Richmond, them coming down here and showing our students exactly how to dress for the workforce. we have a multitude of initiatives going on. We have our What the Health program that we are excited about, which is going to get our youth and families collectively moving. We plan on partnering with different entities in the city to try to get everybody up and moving, because we know that we are a city that has bought into the initiative of our former First Lady of Let's Move. So we are doing multiple things over here. We also have our scholarship program. That scholarship program is named after Jessica L. Morse Coley. That scholarship alone is for books and supplies for Hopewell High School students who have graduated high school with their associate's degree and with over a 3.5 GPA. Most of those students are also working full-time jobs right here in the city. So we were excited to be able to do that scholarship to encourage them to further their education and alleviate at least another cost for their families. We have the Community Conversations initiative that we have been working diligently on with a few partners from the Downtown Partnership, so that we can start having conversations with some of the organizations that we donations to in this city, so that everyone will know exactly why those organizations qualified and were recipients of the donations from the Office on Youth and Youth Services Commission. So we have a lot going on. We also plan on continuing our partnership with Hopewell Public School Systems, where we go into the schools and actually discuss with the youth positive behaviors and how those can be great assets for them as students, not just short-term, but long-term. So I'm hopeful with me being able to tell you a little bit more about the programs that we have, that you will understand that we are not just a basketball program. We are not just a recreational initiative, that we are actually trying to take care of all youth, no matter whether they play sports or no matter whether they are playing in the band, no matter whether they are a student who has a desire to get into government. So those are some of the things that we are working diligently on. And another one is our A Night at the Library initiative, where we'll partner with our local library and get students registered to have library cards. And we'll also have a read-in, and we've partnered with the school system for that also. So as Mr. Napper said, we have been over here pretty much in the same building for multiple years now, awaiting the opportunity for city council, citizens, anyone to stop by, ring our doorbell, and learn more about us. And we have been determined this year, since I have become the chair in August, to make sure that unity in the community is our biggest theme for this year and for future projects.
Very much for that overview. Councillor Pond.
Oh, thank you. Great job.
Thank you.
Okay, are there any other questions?
Madam Mayor,
Yes, ma'am.
I have a something to say in reference to Mr. Napper and Mrs. Mitchell. I would like to thank you for all the programs that you have been adamant about in reference to our youth in the city of Hopewell. Within your presentation, I gathered that you are very supportive, very adamant about servicing the youth of Hopewell. So therefore, I'm in support of the renovation of Malvern Gym to accommodate the Office on Youth and assisting the youth and families within the city of Hopewell. Thank you for the presentation.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you very much. Is there any other questions? Okay, I don't see any hands raised. Mr. Altman, before we adjourn, I did not recap the ask from the city attorney's office. I did recap the ones from the clerk.
Madam Mayor, I'm
Yes,
sorry, we still have the council budget to do, don't we?
yes. So, Mr. Altman, as I was saying, I didn't recap the city attorney section or this section in terms of ask. Can you read those out so I can make sure I'm tracking?
I think the one item that came out of the city attorney, it was looking at having a meeting, maybe potentially at the June 23rd, where you discussed and clarified the city attorney's role with regard to constitutional officers.
Mhm. Wasn't there a request for information from somebody?
I don't think,
Okay, okay.
I
Maybe not.
mean, there was some discussion of travel, but I didn't have anything about a request for any information regarding the budget.
Okay, that was just clerk section. We already captured that, right?
Yeah, Office on Youth,
Mhm.
Mrs. Pelham discussed the possibility of looking at a policy like we have with fire to use unexpended funds in the fiscal year budget to go towards a fund to renovate Maloney, the old
Mhm.
Maloney School gym.
Mhm.
And that, I think that's all I've got.
And I asked about looking at leasing options for actual space.
Different space, okay.
Mhm.
And the
We
renovation,
had an issue with the entire budget, Mr. Altman.
Right,
Yeah.
but I'm asking about ask to take away for the notes, not people's personal opinions. So,
That wasn't my personal opinion. That was the issue I had that we needed to-
Counselor Randolph, please. I'm not trying to be funny.
I'm
After
not
every
either.
section, I'm not sure if you are, but after each section, I recap what the asks are. I did that with the state attorney with no interjections. So I'm just recapping what the asks were, which has been the process every single meeting that we've done, and not sharing what people's comments or statements were. So in terms of the ask, Mr. Altman, like I was recapping for the city attorney, you just have to, we're gonna come back at the June 23rd meeting with the city attorney providing options. And then for the Office on Youth, you have the something similar to what fire did with unexpended funds and then leasing. Do you have any other asks from this section?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay.
I had asked and Ms. Pelham had qualified, and that's why I'm interrupting, is that I had an issue and Ms. Pelham asked if I wanted to look at alternative budgeting or funding, and I said, yes. That was my ask to do at a later issues meeting. That's why I'm saying right now, I'm not trying to be funny. I am seriously saying that I had an ask that Ms. Pelham qualified and I said yes. So I assume that that's going to be on the list for an ask to do alternate funding.
Okay, to be clear, that's not what was stated, but that's your ask. It's fine. She asked you, what were your issues and would you want to share them now? And you said, I'm not in favor of this budget. I'm not going to vote for it. That's all I have to say. And that's how you ended the conversation. You didn't clearly articulate that you was looking for alternate fundings, but you have now. So when you mean alternative fundings for the notes, when you mean alternative funding for the notes, I'm trying to capture it. Are you trying to see alternative funding?
Someone asked me if that was my issue.
Please stop cutting
Point
me
of
off.
order,
Thank you.
point of order.
Thank you. What is your point of order? Yeah, I'm just,
Call to end the meeting.
okay. What your point of order is how to end the meeting? I'm just trying to get clarity.
I'd like to, I make a motion to end the meeting.
Second.
Councilor Randolph, please follow with Mr. Altman with your request. I'm just trying to get clarity on it. Roll call, please.
Councilor Randolph?
Yeah.
Councilor Holloway?
Counselor Parton,
Yes.
Mayor Gore,
No.
Counselor Denton,
Yes.
Counselor Pelham,
no.
Vice Mayor Bennett.
Yes.
Mr. Altman, follow up with me, please, with this request so I can track it in my notes. Thank you. Everyone have a good night.
Fucking stupid.